Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. And boy, oh boy, are we learning through misfortunes today, my friends. It has been a wild morning in pretty much every sense of the word here at the Karen Reed trial. I don't know where or when I'm going to be able to edit all this. And then, there might be more days and still. And I don't know how much longer he's going to be on the stand, but if it's the rest of today and goes into other days, I would not be surprised. We will see how it progresses. But it's a thing, man. It's a thing to be sure. And wow, what can you say? Michael Proctor is not the best investigator there's ever been. Some of his techniques as part of his investigation have left some things to be desired. His style of communication at times has been somewhat unprofessional. His thoroughness in his investigation could have been a little bit more detailed. Yeah, I mean, yeah. We'll see. They said they'll finish with Proctor today. They said that. We'll see if that's true. Yeah. All right, we're back. I'm glad that you all are here to spend time with me as we learn from the continuing stupid. Thank you, D, for the hearts. Do you have to have a test to do that job? Presumably. Presumably. And in this particular context, I think we're learning from Proctor's misfortune. We're learning from Proctor's misfortune today. We're learning how not to be bad detectives. Although, to be honest, I think anyone with a brain and, just thinking it through would have been able to figure out several of the things that Michael Proctor missed. If you left me in a room alone and said, okay, Uncivil, write the protocols for a detective, go. I think I could do a reasonably better job than whatever Proctor has produced. Not to say it would be as good as the professionals, not to say it would be as good as an experienced law enforcement officer. But, I think with a little bit of luck and a little bit of, caffeine, I could produce some protocols that would be at least an improvement on Proctor. So, there's that. How will Lally really beltate him? I don't even know if you try. To be honest. Because if you try, that means if you do redirect, it probably means recross. And do you really want to give Proctor more bites at that apple, man? All right, guys, here we go again.
Okay, let's bring the witness in, please. All right, Mr. Jackson, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Triple Proctor, before we wrote, we were discussing Sally Port video that you watched several weeks ago. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. You indicated that the video that you watched was proper in terms of orientation, but the timestamp on the bottom had been inverted, correct?
Yes, that's the way it appeared.
And you recall that being a yellow chyron underneath?
To the best of,
In other words, the font color.
to the best of my memory, yes.
Which of the Canton Police Department videos were you responsible for retrieving, if any?
I did not retrieve any of them.
So what I'm trying to ask is, and maybe I'm doing it inartfully, how did those Sallyport videos end up in the possession of the Commonwealth? What was the line of succession?
Detective Lieutenant Tully retrieved the Sallyport videos, I believe.
And do you know from whom he retrieved those Sallyport videos?
I believe
Individual.
it was the chief of police.
Okay, Chief Rafferty specifically gave him whatever videos were provided.
Correct, that's my understanding.
And then he provided those to you for your review.
Yes.
I want to stay on the subject of videos for a second, but shift gears to the Ring video footage. You've already testified that there were several hundred Ring videos from One Meadows, from both the facing the driveway and the front door camera, correct?
Yes.
As the case officer, you obtained and controlled those Ring videos from One Meadows from the moment that they came into Massachusetts State Police custody until they were handed over to the Commonwealth, correct?
Yes, they were archived.
You drafted the search warrant for the Ring video access records, correct?
I did.
You obtained the warrant returns once those search warrants were executed, correct?
I did.
You took possession of Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone physically, correct?
Yes.
And you had access to Mr. O'Keefe's Ring account in that cell phone, is that right?
Correct.
You indicated that you reviewed several of the videos on his Ring app on his cell phone, is that right?
Yes.
So you obviously had not only possession of his cell phone, you had possession of his login account information to get into the app on his cell phone. Is that right?
I don't believe we had the password. We had his email account associated with the Ring.
Which means
app.
some
So
way
you-
or another, you could get access to the Ring videos
Correct.
and watch those Ring videos on his app on the phone,
Yes.
which means you had full access to the app. You could keep videos, you could save for later, you could delete videos, you could do anything you wanted to within that app, correct?
Yes, those are the capabilities within that app.
Trooper Proctor, did you delete any of the Ring videos ever from John O'Keefe's phone?
Absolutely not.
Did you delete a video of Miss Reed arriving to One Meadows at approximately 12:41 a.m. on January 29th, 2022?
Absolutely not.
You will agree, Trooper Proctor, that the video of Miss Reed returning home from 34 Fairview at approximately 12:41 a.m. is not there.
Correct.
As the case officer, you're aware that Trooper DeChico also reviewed some or all of those videos, correct?
Yes.
And he did that at your request.
Correct.
He took notes of his review of those videos, correct?
Yes.
And then he provided those notes to you so that you could then memorialize those notes and your notes in a broader report that you then drafted in November of 2022, correct?
From memory serves me, the report I wrote regarding the Ring camera was based off my observations of the videos that I had watched.
But you certainly did have, as you just indicated, you did accumulate his notes and review his notes as well as your own notes, correct?
Best of my recollection, I wrote that report off of my notes.
Did you actually, at any point before writing your report, did you note or did you review his notes?
I can't recall.
You asked him, he reviewed the videos at your directions, correct? At
Yes.
your direction, correct?
Yes.
And obviously he would have wanted to provide you whatever insights he had into his review of those videos. Otherwise, what's the point, right?
Correct.
So when you reviewed his notes, did you see that they were on some sticky pads? You remember that?
That sounds about right.
Missing videos. Good.
Do you recall exactly, as you sit here, exactly what was on one or more of those sticky pads that you reviewed from Trooper DeChico?
I don't know.
Would it refresh your recollection if you would take a look at a copy of those notes?
Yes.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
We start cross with missing ring videos. That's how we're starting our resumption of cross. Missing videos. Along with non-disclosed videos from earlier and missing minutes from videos.
May I?
The
Yes.
missing 42 minutes.
If you would mind taking a look at the top or the uppermost top note that's highlighted with a sticky note next to it.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Super Proctor, do you have these notes in mind, specifically the uppermost note?
The 0041?
Correct.
Yes.
All right. You reviewed this previously before you wrote your report, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you note that at 0041, which is a time relative to what DeChico was looking at on the ring video, he indicated tail lights from driveway, parentheses, I think she arrived home, in parentheses, correct?
Correct.
0041 is what? What's that in reference to?
Just after midnight, the approximate time where Miss Reed will be returning from Fairview Road.
It's military time for 12:41 a.m., correct?
Yes.
You wrote a report on November, I'm sorry, I earlier said November, it's actually June 1, 2022, memorializing the times that were of note to you in that ring footage, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall every single entry that you made concerning the events that were of note to you that were reflected in your report?
The majority of them. Maybe not every single one.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at a copy of your report to determine what all you did and did not note?
Yes, sir.
May I approach?
Sure. Do you have it with you, Trooper? Do you have your report with you?
Don't you want me to know?
I'd ask you to review that report, especially as to page 2 and 3. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. Trooper, do you have those events in mind?
I do.
Your report is dated June 1st, 2022, correct?
Correct.
And reflected in this report are the bullet points of the times that you found of some note in your review of all of the ring footage from One Meadows, correct?
Yes.
In your report, there is no mention of the footage showing Karen Reed arriving home at 12:41 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And that's notwithstanding the fact that in Trooper DeChico's report, in his handwritten notes, he makes note of an event at 12:41 a.m. indicating, I think she arrived home, correct?
Correct.
So sometime between when Trooper DeChico wrote his notes and when you wrote your report, that video footage vanished, correct? correct?
There's also no date on Trooper DeChico's notes. We have many dates from Ring video, so I don't know if he's referencing a different date.
Well, you're aware that the video footage from 12:41 a.m. is gone, correct?
Yes, it's something I've tried to find through Ring for months, as well as the video when Miss Roberts, Miss McCabe, Miss Reed arrived back at John's and they're looking at the broken taillight. That video is gone as well.
So, at some point, while this footage was in Massachusetts State Police custody and being reviewed by Trooper DeChico, that video existed, didn't it?
Objection.
The objection is sustained. Mr. Jackson, don't waive that again, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. The fact is, notwithstanding Trooper DeChico's handwritten notes, there's no video of 12:41 on January 29th, is there?
No, there isn't.
Trooper Proctor, would you agree that from the very beginning of your investigation, you treated Karen Reed very differently than you treated the Alberts and the McCabe's in this case?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Was she treated differently?
Absolutely not. Like I've said before, we followed the facts and the evidence, an open mind.
Did you consider her to be, for want of a better phrase, an outsider?
No, not at all.
Not somebody from Canton,
No, not at all.
not family, not friends with the Alberts?
Absolutely not.
At some point, your view of this case caused you to turn what could be described as a bias into an out-and-out hatred. Would you agree with that?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you develop some sort of hatred for Ms. Reed at
Objection.
any point in your investigation?
I'll allow it.
Again, we followed the facts and the evidence which showed Miss Reed hit Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle. And yes, at times I got emotional because of that. And I said some stuff, texted some things I shouldn't have, but it was based off the evidence.
As a matter of fact, you did express your feelings about Ms. Reed in yet another text message that we haven't gone over yet today. Is that right? On February 4th, 2022? Might as well turn to tab 10.
Tab 10?
It's either the bait stamp or the,
This is your triple F, this is Foxtrot. And the base stamp is 2526.
Yes, sir.
Do you see an entry from Courtney Proctor, a text starting, "I didn't give my"?
Yes.
Request permission to publish, Your Honor?
yes.
2526, Mr. Bates. On that date, February 4th, 2022, your sister texted in relation to some sort of donation that she had given. "I didn't give my name as I didn't want anyone to link me to Michael," being you, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Okay, take that down.
Okay, I just was given a gift, and didn't want it to be anonymous because I didn't want to tie to Proctor. Okay, just a little gifts. The wife with the gifts and the sisters with the gifts. Gifts. Shit, dude. Come on. It's too comical. It's too comical. You want to know how I got these scars? Woo!
You are unmuted.
You're on.
Yes.
You see the text from Courtney Proctor. I did not give my name as I didn't want anyone to link me.
So that's stricken. That's what was objected to, just this one, or the whole page goes in.
You responded to a text message from your sister, correct? And your response was, hopefully she kills herself, correct?
Yes,
Who's she?
the defendant.
Miss Reed?
Correct.
You literally said that you hope that Karen Reed, the subject of your investigation, the woman sitting to my left about 7 feet from me, that she would just die, correct?
The figure of speech.
You wanted her to, the figure of speech is you wanted her to kill herself,
No.
right?
No, it's not.
Trooper Proctor, Karen Reed, in your investigation, had quickly become a very serious problem for you, hadn't she?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you believe that Karen Reed was a problem or an issue for your investigation?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No, absolutely not.
In your words, quote, all the powers that be want answers ASAP. That's what you texted on January 29th, right?
Yes,
That put a lot of pressure on you, didn't it, Trooper Proctor?
there's a lot of pressure in every case, sir.
This case involves a Boston cop whose family you were actually connected to, correct?
Fair.
Loosely.
Loosely.
Al.
Loosely.
Loosely.
Yes.
Loosely.
Julia, loosely.
Yes.
Colin Albert, loosely.
Yes.
Kevin Albert, loosely.
Yes.
Loose enough to leave his badge and his gun in your cruiser when after a night of drinking, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
You agreed in your group chat that you needed to, quote, make this cut and dry because another cop was involved. Those are your words, right?
Objection.
Where is this?
This was referred to in earlier text messages, group chats.
So is that right? Did you say that, sir?
I did text that. I don't know if it's in the exact context. But yes, those were my words.
Okay.
Yes, that was in the group chat.
Good. That's fine.
Your friends wrote this whole thing, in their words, stinks, correct?
Yes, I interpret that as a joke.
You believed, Trooper
Of
Proctor,
course.
that your life would be much easier if Karen Reed was just dead, didn't you?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No. Like it said, it was a figure of speech. My
Sure.
emotions got the best of me based on, the fact that Miss Reed hit Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle and left him to die on the side of the road. So my emotions got the best of me with that figure of speech.
Well, let's talk about your figures of speech. During the course of your investigation, your figures of speech include the following. She's a bitch.
Objection.
Is that right?
Yes.
A whack job, correct?
Yes.
A retard, right?
Yes.
Her balloon knot leaks, right?
Yes.
No ass, correct?
Yes.
She's fucked, according to you, right?
Yes.
Ass leaker. That was the word you used, a figure of speech, right?
Correct.
A girl who shits herself, right?
Correct.
And then fuck her, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree, Trooper Proctor, that you have dehumanized Karen Reed during the course of your investigation with comments and words like this?
Objection.
I'll give you this one, Mr. Jackson.
Would you agree with that?
I would say based off that language, yes.
And you admitted, in your own words, that the cop homeowner wasn't going to, quote, catch any shit, right?
Correct.
Because you were out to quote, make this cut and dry. Isn't that right?
The homeowner wasn't going to catch any shit because Mr. Elba had nothing to do with Mr. O'Keefe's death.
Because you were going to make sure that the case was cut and dry. Those were your words, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
And Trooper Proctor, it would be far easier for you to pin it on the girl who's just a whack job cunt, in your words,
Yeah, there's that demonetization again.
just kills herself,
Yep.
right?
Objection.
Sustained.
Shame on you, sir.
Objection.
All right, so jurors, disregard that. I've told you before, lawyers can't make comments. They can ask questions. And Mr. Jackson, you know better than
I
that.
understand. That's all I have.
Mr. Lally?
Thank you.
Really? Seriously? Really, dude? Seriously? Really? You're going to try to rehabilitate this? Really? You sure? You going to try to rehabilitate this? Really? Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Now, when you had started with cross-examination the other day, you were asked some questions about whether or not in August of 2022, you disliked or did not like Mr. Yannetti, correct?
That's correct.
Why was that?
Well, basically, he stood up in open court and spouted lie after lie about me, called me corrupt and conflicted, dragged my name through the mud after I spent 10 plus years without a single complaint filed against me, and he had no basis or no facts for these wild accusations, because there are none. This investigation was done with the utmost integrity, not just by me, but my supervisors and other troopers in my office, as well as Mr. Yannetti shows up at my sister's school yesterday in the parking lot where he's not welcomed, or where people are not supposed to be, with one of their witnesses and their private investigator. And a teacher sees this, it informs Mr. Yannetti that he can't be there, and instead of saying okay and leaving, he asks, is Courtney Proctor in the building? Does she work here? She calls me to see if she was being served.
Objection. Can we approach?
Yes.
I was mad at him because he stood up in open court and said this case was messed up and I was corrupt, and that's why I'm mad at him. And there's no evidence of that. I feel like there might be some evidence of that. And what the heck is going on right now? Where he's not welcomed. What do you mean he's not welcomed? Unless there's like a restraining order. If he's looking for a witness, it sounds like he's in a public place. He didn't go into the school. He's in the parking lot. So if he's looking for a witness, then that's part of his job. And if he's trying to serve somebody, that's part of his job. What do you mean he's not welcome there? Like, is there a restraining order or something that's prohibited? What are you talking about? If he was there to serve somebody, I mean, okay. Sure, why not? A lawyer can do that. I mean, typically you get a process server, but nothing in the rules prevents it. Although, for potential evidentiary reasons, it would be advisable to get someone else to do it, because if you have to prove service, if you have to have that, that service happen, it would be nice to have someone other than the lawyer who has to testify to them. And strictly speaking, they can. It's just not ideal, so that might be why the private investigator's there, to get them to do it. Because if you have to prove service, it avoids calling the lawyer to the stand, which complicates things slightly. And I don't know whether or not he just opened the door to like any other potential corruption allegations, but it sounds like maybe. And it was Lally who asked it. Right? It's Lally that asked it, which is important because if it's an error, right, because it opens the door, he's the one that asked the question as opposed to the defense lawyers asking the question. Right? Because if we assume that there are prior bad things and we assume that these were excluded by the state, then obviously the defense can't ask the question, but the prosecution can. And once they open the door, maybe it opens the door. Did recross just get even more exciting than we ever believed? Because I'm here for the possibility. Yeah. I'm here for the possibility that we just made recross incredibly exciting. A non-scope question. Yes, that's, well, I don't know if it's with scope. I don't know if it's within scope or not, to be honest, because the defense did ask about why he hated him, right? He said that he hated him, right? So yeah, it's within scope. I disagree. It's within scope. The cross included, didn't you say you hated this guy and all the rest of it? It's like, so why? Yeah, that's within scope. I disagree. But it does open up a new can of worms. Who's on trial again? Who knows? Yeah. So, because right now, I don't mind the defense making a stink, because right now, Trooper Proctor is impugning the integrity of the defense lawyer by saying, well, he's not welcome. It implies that he was doing something wrong or illegal in some way. Which, if that's true, then, fine. I mean, if there's some sort of restraining order or there's some sort of order from the court, then fine. But if there's not, then he's impugning the character of the lawyer. And I'd be like, I object. Because, well, you're impugning my character and you can't do that. It's like, what did I do wrong? So, and this potentially opens the door to why we are potentially in the parking lot, serving the sister or whoever it is we're serving or whatever. So they're having a whole fight about that now, I'm presuming, about what it did or did not open testimony towards. I presume that's what they're having a fight about. But I mean, he could presumably go into the, he could even go into the school as long as he went to the main office. I mean, presumably, right? That's legal, right? I'm looking for someone who might be working there. So I have a legal basis to enter the building, go directly to the main office and inquire. If they tell me to go away, then fine. But, if I'm serving at a place where they work, fair enough. If I can serve them personally, which you have to do incidentally at work, as long as we're here to learn something legally, let's learn something of legal value. As a typical rule, and I'm sure some states will disagree, but as a typical rule, if you want to serve someone, say at their house, any adult will do. Any adult over the age of 18 will do, right? So you can serve anybody. But if you're serving someone at their work, you have to actually serve that person. So the more you know, little legal tidbit for you. Thank you for the super chat. The finer points of process. Your state may disagree. Please check your state for details. Yeah. Everything is exceptions, man. It's exceptions all the way down. We do have 50 sovereign states over here, so their little tweaks to the law are interesting. And then there's Louisiana, which is off on its own because it's a civil law state, and God help you. At least the other 49 states are playing from a common rule book, and then Louisiana's over here like, hold my beer. Holy shit. Yeah. Yeah. What's the main difference? The main difference is the value of precedent.
You are unmuted.
The main difference is the value of precedent. Common law is built on precedent. Civil law is not. All precedent in a civil law system is informative or persuasive. It is never binding. That's the difference. And, you know, the rest of America inherited its legal tradition from England, which is common law, and the Louisiana inherited its legal tradition from the damn French, which is civil law. And so, yeah, well, that's good news. Damn French.
Thank you. You may be seated. Close back in session.
Witness 2, please. Jurors, I am striking that last answer. It was probably a partial answer cut off. I'm striking it completely, disregarded. If you took notes, cross the notes out. You're not to consider it in any way. It is completely stricken from the record.
Ooh.
And Trooper, I'd suggest you listen to the question being asked of you before you answer it.
My apologies, Your Honor.
Keep your voice up, Mr. Lally.
Trooper Proctor, let me try that again. As far as you were asked about text messages that occurred in August of 2022 in which you indicated that you did not like Mr. Gannett, correct?
Correct.
And so at the time of that text message, it was sent in August of 2022. Why was
that? In August of 2022? Why was that?
Yes.
The reasons I laid out, the false accusations of being conflicted and corrupt spouted in an open.
Not for nothing, Trooper Proctor, but strictly speaking, you didn't lay it out because the entire answer has been stricken from the record, so it doesn't exist.
Open court, which there's zero evidence of. Like I said, I stand by the integrity of this investigation, as well as every trooper and supervisor in my office.
Were there also motions filed by Mr. Yannetti or by counsel containing photographs of yourself and some children?
Yes.
And what, if anything, were the allegations in regard to the children that were depicted in those photographs?
So the photograph was taken in my parents' backyard.
Objections overruled.
My parents' backyard at a pool party. There's some little kids in the photo. Defense counsel kept insinuating that those were the McCabe's children, when in fact they were my family, my cousins.
Have you at any point in time ever met any children of the McCabe's?
No, sir.
In the course of this investigation, as it was sort of alleged on cross-examination, did you essentially pick a suspect and then try to have the evidence fit that?
Objection. Form, meaning,
In that form, it's strictly not allowed to ask if that way, Mr. Lally.
How did you conduct this investigation, you and the other troopers in your office?
From the start of this investigation, with an open mind. Like I said earlier, we don't know what we had, possible medical. So as the day went on and we collected more evidence and developed compelling evidence against Ms. Reed.
Now, with reference to this investigation, it continued after January 29th, 2022, when you had those text communications with your friends, correct?
Yes.
Was there additional information that you compiled over the course of that investigation following January 29th, 2022?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Following that date of those text messages on January 29th, 2022,
Yes.
Was there additional information that was gathered over the course of your investigation by yourself or other troopers involved in the investigation?
Yes.
And from that additional information that was gathered, what, if any, information that was gathered throughout the course of the investigation indicated that anyone besides Ms. Reed had anything to do with Ms. O'Keefe's death?
All the information gathered after that date indicated no one else was responsible for Mr. O'Keefe's death.
Sir, you were asked some questions on cross-examination about testimony in a prior proceeding and shown specifically at page 01563, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
If this is what Lally has for rehabilitation, I really don't
Sir,
think the juice is worth the squeeze, man.
01562, 63, and 64, and ask you to read those and look up.
If this is what Lally considers rehabilitation, the juice is not worth the squeeze, man. You're just asking basic banal questions. I don't think it's going to recover from that.
What were the numbers
And you're
again,
giving the
Mr.
defense another fun opportunity to ask all kinds of fun questions.
63, and 64.
Thank you.
Can I explain sovereign? You're UK based? And you don't understand sovereign? In the UK? You sure about that? Yeah. But the sovereign is essentially the ultimate authority. The sovereign is the sovereign is the king. It is the authority, is the ultimate authority.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the sovereign.
Trooper, after reviewing those 3 pages, there are now more.
You know, before Magna Carta, the sovereign was the king, unquestioned. After Magna Carta, less so. Then it was sort of the king plus parliament. But, you know, the king plus parliament is the sovereign in the UK, because they are the ultimate authority. They are the authority from which all other authority flows. They're the top of the heap. And so the sovereign is the king. And so who is the king of the United States? Well, the king of the state is the state. It's not, yeah, so it's, yeah, never mind. We can press on.
Context to what you were just asked about on one specific page of that testimony?
Yes.
And those were questions related to what you had told and what you had informed other people within the office or your supervisors in relation to relationships with both the McCabe's and the Albans, correct?
Correct.
And in the course of that testimony, did you relay to that body the same testimony you just relayed to this jury in regard to photographs of children and defense counsel attributing those to being the McCabe's children, which they were not?
Yes.
Now, you were asked some questions by Mr. Jackson in regard to what you knew or why your focus was not on Brian Alberts later on in the evening of January 29, 2022, correct?
Correct.
And why was that? Why was your focus not on Brian Albert at that time?
There was just no evidence that Mr. L was involved anyway. Like I said before, from witness interviews, the statements Ms. Reed provided to witnesses, the one shoe left at the scene, the taillight pieces found underneath the snow that were dug out by the CERT team, the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, the one shoe at the hospital that was observed, her statements to us, Sergeant Mechanic and I, while we interviewed her, clearly the broken taillight, and the fact that leaving Brockton, instead of going to Dighton, she backtracked to go to Canton to retrieve her vehicle and then go double back to go to Dighton, which I found odd.
Now, if at any point in time over the course of your investigation you had evidence which led you to believe that Mr. Abel was involved in the death of Mr. O'Keefe, what would you have done?
Objection.
Ask it differently.
With regard to, again, you testified beyond January 29th. At any point in your investigation, did you find any information or evidence leading you to believe that Brian Albert was involved in the death of John O'Keefe?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No.
Now, if you had found information leading to that conclusion or evidence leading to that, what would you have done?
Objection.
Then we'll allow it.
Not only myself, but members of my office would have pursued that.
Regardless of his position, correct?
Regardless of what he does for a profession.
You know what I may approach?
Yes.
I don't think the rehabilitation is working out that great, man. These are the questions you came back with. I want to do a few good. I want to do a few good moment right now. It's like, really, these are the questions you call me for? Please tell me you have something more. Please tell me you have more. These men are on trial for their lives. Please tell me you have something more. This is what we got up for? Holy shit, dude. Come on. Come on.
New document I showed you the other day. Do you recognize that?
That is text communications between me and my high school buddies.
And sir, if I could direct your attention within there to page 2535.
Yes, sir.
You were asked some questions about text on that page, but also there's a text on that page that begins with, they arrived at house together, correct?
Correct.
And what is the date and time associated with that text message that you sent?
That was sent on January 29, 2022 at 11 p.m.
And what is the content, or what did you send to that group, that text message?
The message reads, they arrived at the house together, got into an argument, she was driving and left.
So that's also information that you had late in the evening of January 29th, 2022, correct?
Objection. Inform that system.
With respect to that information you conveyed in that text message, when did you learn them?
During the course of the day on the 29th.
Mayor Proctor?
Yes.
Mr. Retreat?
Foot lockers and phone calls and solo cups. Yep, that sounds about right.
Now, you were asked some questions about people that you spoke to on the 29th, correct?
Yes.
And that included Brian Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, Kerry Roberts, is that correct?
Trooper DeChico and Trooper Dunn interviewed Ms. Roberts.
And my apologies. When I was saying you, I meant collectively.
Yes.
But you specifically yourself and Sergeant Mechanic, you also spoke with the defendant on January 29th, correct?
Correct.
And that would have been prior to any of the text communications that were contained within that chat with your friends, correct?
Correct.
Let me ask you something about charging decisions. Is that something that you make in this case or any case?
I don't make any charging decisions. We're essentially fact finders.
That's
So as
technically
far as
correct.
what Ms. Reed was charged with or when she was charged with it, that's not something that's within your purview, correct?
No, not at all.
That's true. You don't have the ability to charge. That's correct.
Now, specifically,
I'm not sure how that
you
helps,
were
but
asked some
okay.
questions about some text messages between yourself and Trooper Chico in regard to the medical exam, correct?
Correct.
And those occurred in April of 2022, is that correct?
Yes.
Was the defendant, Ms. Reed, charged with murder in April of 2022?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No.
That wasn't until June of 2022, correct?
It's correct.
And that was at the conclusion of the grand jury, is that correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
And you're aware that there was a grand jury in this case, correct?
Objection. I'll withdraw that.
Okay.
Yes.
Answer that.
And are you aware of certain witnesses that testified at the grand jury?
Objection.
I'll allow
Yes.
Are you aware that Dr. Sporty Bello testified at the grand jury?
Objection.
that. I'll allow that.
Yes.
And so, false reason then that the defendant wasn't charged with murder until after the grand jury concluded and Dr. Sporty Bello had testified before that grand jury, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
I mean, yeah. I'm going to go on the assumption that Massachusetts requires a grand jury for this kind of charge. So, working under that assumption, which incidentally half the states do require grand juries and half the states don't, and the states that require it for different purposes. But I'm going to go out on a limb and assume Massachusetts requires it for this kind of crime. So, yes, they were charged after the grand jury because that had to occur. So you're just telling me a truism at this point. Great. That's fantastic news.
Now, the Albert family that you were familiar with some members of, that's not an entity, correct?
No.
Individual members of a family, some you know, some you may not, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. Watch your phone, Mr. Merrill.
Certainly not. How many members of the Albert family did you know when you started this investigation in January, or when you received this call on January 29th, 2022?
Julie, Chris Albert, Colin, and Kevin Albert.
Now, you were asked some questions about interviewing Julie Albert and Chris Albert at their home on February 10th, correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to that date, had you ever been to that home prior to February 10th?
I'd not been to that, this kind of their new home. I'd never been to their new home or the previous home either.
Now, as far as conversations with either Julie or Chris Albert, when was the last time you talked to them before you interviewed them on February 10th?
I believe I'd reached out to Julie to coordinate the interview, but prior to this case, there was that one random text message she sent me and my sister when I was going on a family ski trip. They weren't a part of it. She wanted me to take a video of my sister skiing, but
That was in February 2022. Correct?
yeah.
So what
Yes.
my question is prior to February 10th, 2022, prior to any arrangements to schedule an interview for February 10th, when was the last time that you spoke to either Julie Albert or Chris Albert, if you know?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Now, with regard to that text message in regard to skiing in late February 2022, you were shown that text message, correct?
Yes.
Was there any response from you?
No.
Did you have any further communication with Julie Albert after that interview on January 29th, 2022, related to this investigation?
I recall the serving her for grand jury. I know she wanted to kind of have an idea of what the process was like. So there's communications regarding that.
And was that something that was solely done with Julie Albert or other witnesses or what?
All the witnesses that were called in the grand jury, it's unusual for, the majority of civilians to be called in the grand jury. So they obviously have questions about the process.
Now, as far as babysitting for your children, is that something that Julie Albert ever did?
No.
And as far as those text communications between yourself and your sister regarding that, is that something that you had asked for or something that your sister had suggested?
Yeah, my sister had suggested that. We never followed up with having Julie watch my kids.
Now, you were asked some questions about text messages with your sister Courtney, correct?
Correct.
And I I believe a couple times you would use the term, well, let me ask you this first. With regard to from January 29th throughout at least January, February of 2022, this was this case became something that was on the news on a fairly regular basis, correct?
News and social media, yes.
And so when you were using the term in describing what you spoke to your sister about as far as newsworthy, what did you mean by that?
My sister
Way
lives
to
in
lead the
Canton,
question
so
there.
there's a lot of, as well on the news and social media stuff that was being discussed on those platforms.
Now, as far as the discussions that you had with regard to your sister, how would you describe or how would you characterize the type of information that you shared with her, if any?
Just general information, nothing specific about the case.
You were also asked about a specific text from your sister on January 30th. It started out with, I believe it was Jesus Christ. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was in reference to the body of Mr. O'Keefe being found on Brian Albert's lawn, correct?
Correct.
And so she's asking you about that on January 30th, correct?
Yes.
So fair to reason that wasn't something that you shared with her prior to January 30th, correct?
Correct.
And something that you hadn't shared with her at all at that point that you received that text communication, correct?
Correct.
Sustained as to your form. Watch how you ask these questions, Mr. Valley, as your witness.
Yes, sir. With regard to that information, as far as who the homeowner was, what, if anything, had you shared with Sister Courtney prior to you receiving that text from her, indicating her knowledge?
Yeah, I don't recall sharing anything with in regards to the homeowner.
Now, in regard to any issues of a gift or request for a gift, how would you characterize that? Was that serious? Was that in jest? How would you characterize that?
I didn't take.
I'll allow it.
I didn't take that offer seriously. And as I had mentioned, I believe on Monday, that I didn't ask for a gift. I never received one. I kind of said, get my wife a gift. She had been home about 10 straight nights with the boys. We had another homicide the week before. So that was my response, get Elizabeth one. And she never received one.
Now, you were asked some questions about Colin Albert, correct?
Correct.
And as far as what, if any, information did you have as far as Colin Albert and his being at 34 Fairview at the same time as anyone from coming back from the waterfall?
My understanding, Colin arrived later on to just see his cousin, his birthday. He didn't stay that long, maybe an hour, a little over an hour. And as he was leaving, I think he ran into his aunt and uncle as his ride had arrived out front and left at sometime around 12:10 a.m.
Was that information that you had prior to your interview with Colin Albert?
We knew Colin wasn't at the house. The timing was provided by Colin.
And at any point in time in your investigation, what, if any, evidence did you ever receive that Colin Albert was at 34 Fairview at the same time as Mr. O'Keefe or the defendant?
Based on Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone location data using his Waze app, Colin Albert is leaving around like 12:10 a.m. Mr. O'Keefe is about a half a mile away at 12:20 a.m. So they did not cross paths.
Now, Mr. Jackson was asking about some people as far as interviews or later in October or so of 2022 or beyond. You were given 5 names as far as Brian Albert Jr., Julie Nagel, Ms. Kent, Ms. Fabiano, Ms. Alba, and Ms. Levinson, and Colin Albert, correct?
Yes.
And then you were asked about 3 people that you had interviewed, and then were asked if there was only one person left, that being Colin Albert, correct?
Correct.
That math match up as far as 5 people, 3 given, and only 1 person not interviewed?
No.
Now, with reference to Ms. Kent, Ms. Fabiano, and Ms. Alba, to your knowledge, have they been interviewed at any point in time?
No.
And why not?
They weren't present for when the adults had arrived back from the waterfall.
They had left 34 Fairview like Colin Albert prior to the waterfall people coming in.
Objection.
Sustained is that phone.
What, if any, information did you have with regards to the whereabouts of Ms. Kent, Ms. Fabiano, Ms. Alba, and Colin Albert in relation to 34 Fairview and the arrival of people from the waterfall?
They had left the residence.
So, with respect to Colin Albert, why was it that he was interviewed and not Ms. Kent, Ms. Fabiano, and Ms. Alba?
Colin was falsely accused of
Objection.
Can you answer that same question Mr. Riley asked you differently?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead, answer it.
Colin was the subject of a third-party culprit that had no evidence to back that up.
Objection.
I'm going to allow that.
That had no evidence to back that up, that he was involved whatsoever. My office and myself felt the need to interview Colin, sit him down, and get his story, his facts of that evening. So that's why we interviewed him at that date and time later on.
And when you say we, do you recall who was present with you when you interviewed Colin Albert?
Trooper Zachary Clark.
Are you aware of Sergeant Mechanic getting screenshots from both Colin Albert and from Miss Allie McCabe in relation to text communications they had about picking up Colin Albert from 34 Fairview on January 29th?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about Miss McCabe's cell phone, is that correct?
Yes.
And as far as any material on that phone, are you an expert when it comes to cell phone extractions and what different material may mean within cell bright extraction?
No, that's left to Trooper Garino in our office.
Are you aware of reports regarding those searches from Trooper Nicholas Garino, a Ms. Jessica Hyde, and a Mr. Ian Whitman?
I am aware of those, yes.
And those are people who are experts, those are people who have special knowledge or specialized knowledge as it relates to cell bright technology that you do not, correct?
Objection.
Form of the question is sustained.
What, if any, knowledge are you aware of Trooper Nicholas Garino, Ms. Jessica Hyde, and Mr. Ian Whitman having with respect to cell bright or cell phone technology that you do not have?
Objection.
Allowing it under building.
Daughter, may we approach?
Sure.
You are
Yeah. Leading is the objection. I like how they don't state the basis for objections, and then I'm just like say things like I know what the answer is. I just have to take my best guess. But leading would be the objection. Because it's direct. It's redirect, but it's direct, and you can't lead on direct. So, leading. A lot of judges let attorneys get away with leading on redirect, though. But it's not proper. It could also be a scope objection. That's fair too. It could be a scope objection. I wasn't listening closely enough to be able to adjudicate that one, but whether or not it's scope or not. And as we sort of discussed, different judges have different tolerance on scope. Some judges don't really care. It's pretty unusual to find a judge who like actually applies the black letter law on it. Most judges are like, the vast majority of judges are like, the black letter rule is kind of stupid. So most judges will allow for it. How much they'll allow for is kind of up in the air, but yeah. But technically you can't ask a question that's outside of what the other person asked. That's scope. You're limited to the same.
You are unmuted.
Stuff. But most judges are like, to varying degrees of
Procedure.
Yes.
Let me rephrase that just a little. As far as you're aware that Trooper Nicholas Garino, Ms. Jessica Hyde, and Mr. Ian Whitman have all looked at Ms. McCabe's cell bright and extraction information, correct?
Yes.
And their knowledge, their specialized knowledge in regard to those areas exceeds your own, correct?
Yes.
Now, as far as your conversations with Kevin Allen, how would you characterize those in relation to this investigation?
They had nothing to do with this investigation. Like I said, we were working a cold case together. We also work on other cases together that, unattended deaths that I'll respond to a potential suicide or an overdose in the town of Canton that I'll respond to. But the topic of our conversations were in regards to the cold case or unresolved case that we were working together.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I don't know why we're here at this point. Why are we here? Why is this a place?
Sending the documents I did the other day. You recognize that?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
I do.
What do you recognize that?
Text communication with Kevin Albert.
And sir, if I could direct your attention to debate stamp pages of 2600 and 2601.
Yes, sir.
Now, in regard to activities on that particular date, you had indicated that you had conversations with Kevin Albert about working a cold case from the town of Canton, correct?
Yes.
And specifically on that date, where did the two of you go?
I recall going down to the Cape to at least interview at least one person of interest.
And that was down in the town of Sandwich, to be specific, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in reference to Kevin Albert leaving his badge in your car, do you recall that?
I do.
If I could direct your attention to page 2602.
You really think page 2602 is going to have the answer for this?
And what, if any, text communication is contained on that page as far as you asking Kevin Albert any questions about his address?
After I informed Kevin Albert I had located his badge, I follow up, what's your address? I will drop it off after the gym.
So you're asking his address because you don't know his address, correct?
Correct.
Sustained.
Why are you asking for his address?
I've never been to his house and I don't know where he lives.
You're so close with him that you don't know where his house is, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
I approach this to retrieve your honor.
Yes.
I mean, I've never been to Rumpel's house, and I don't know exactly his address, but I'd like to think that we're reasonably friends, so I don't know how much has to do with anything.
Sir, you were asked some questions about ring videos from One Meadows Avenue, Mr. O'Keefe's home, is that correct?
Yes.
And to be clear, did you delete any ring videos from Mr. O'Keefe's account, either on his app, on his phone, or from the materials that you received pursuant to the search?
Absolutely not.
Now, when you saw that there were ring videos missing from times that you expected videos to be, specifically what I'm asking about is Ms. Reed or the defendant's arrival at the home after leaving Fairview Road, and Ms. McCabe, Ms. Roberts, and the defendant's departure from One Meadows to Fairview Road later on that morning. What did you do?
I reached out to Ring several different times. They informed me if a video is deleted, there's no digital footprint of that. It's essentially kind of gone forever.
And with respect to that time frame, what, if any, other additional steps did you take to try to retrieve that video? Was there a second search warrant, sir?
Yes.
You were looking for additional information from that same ring video, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
What, if
Leading.
anything, were you looking for in that second search?
There you go.
There's additional video.
You were asked some questions about notes from Trooper DeChico, correct?
Correct.
And as far as that 0041 note, do you know what that means?
That just tells me it's a time.
And do you know specifically whether or not that is something that Trooper DeChico saw or something that Trooper DeChico was looking for?
That's something Trooper DeChico could answer for.
have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, you were asked some questions about Sallyport video at Canton Police Station, correct?
Yes.
When you arrived at the Sallyport garage of the Canton Police Station sometime around or shortly after 5:30 p.m., correct?
Yes.
Now, that 5:30 p.m. time, is that before or after 5:07 a.m.?
After.
And 5:07 a.m. is when the Exhibit 6, video number, I believe, 153, with the defendant backing out of the garage where you testified on Monday, you observed some damage to the taillight, correct?
Correct.
And you're aware of some other ring video from Mr. O'Keefe's house showing the defendant, Ms. Roberts and Ms. McCabe, arriving at his house, in which you can see damage to the right passenger taillight, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware of a cruiser camera video from the Canton Police Station, Police Department, specifically Lieutenant Ray, going to One Meadows Ave at 8:22 in the morning on the 29th, in which you can also observe damage to the taillight?
Objection.
Sustained as to the form.
As far as 8:22 in the morning, what, if any, video from One Meadows Avenue are you aware of depicting the defendant's taillight?
Canton Police Department went to conduct a well-being check, and on the dash cruiser camera, you can see the back of Miss Reed's vehicle and the right taillight to be broken and missing pieces.
And as far as your time at the home in Dayton, the defendant's vehicle was towed from that location on that day, correct?
Correct.
And what, if any, video are you aware of
bored.
from that driveway, which depicts the right rear
I
passenger side
don't
taillight
care.
of the defendant's vehicle?
Yeah, as the vehicle's being put on the tow truck, you can make out that there's some pieces missing.
Now, sir, if I could turn you back to those text messages with your friends, January 29th, 2022. With that time in mind, at that point in time, well, let me ask before, as far as all those other videos that we talked to, all of those videos precede your time in the Sallyport garage at 5:30 p.m. on January 29th, correct?
Correct.
Now, with reference to, you mentioned in your testimony the other day, earlier, that at some point in time later in the day or early in that evening, you had met for a debriefing with yourself and the other troopers involved in the investigation on January 29th, is that correct?
Yes.
So fair to say the information that had been collected by yourself and the other troopers on January 29th, you had that in mind, or were you aware of that when you were involved in these text communications with your friends, correct?
Yes.
Guys, why are we here? You know, why are we here? What are you doing? And why are you so bad at it? You're theoretically trying to rehabilitate him, but I can't focus on anything. What do you do? And these questions and answers are lame. They're so banal anyway. It's like, to the extent I can hear anything that's just like banal stuff, it's like, this is what you've decided to go with? It's like, man. All right, everyone, slap your face or something. All right, I'm up. Let's go.
And so were you, at that time that you're texting with your friends, you had seen the defendant's vehicle?
Correct. Yes.
And you had seen the damage to the taillight, correct?
Yes.
And you were aware that Lieutenant Tully and the CERT team had conducted a search around 34 Fairview and recovered Mr. O'Keefe's sneaker and a taillight?
Objection.
Sustained as to form.
What, if anything, were you aware of in regard to Lieutenant Tully doing with the CERT team at 34 Fairview earlier that day?
Detective Lieutenant Tully and the CERT team conducted a search, discovered several pieces of broken taillight pieces, as well as Mr. O'Keefe's missing shoe.
And the shoe that Lieutenant Tully and the CERT team had retrieved, what, if anything, did you observe in relation to that and the shoe that you and Sergeant Mechanic had retrieved from the Good Samaritan Hospital?
Yeah, they were matched. They were both black Nike sneakers with the white logo.
Now, you had talked to first responders, correct?
Yes,
And that included firefighter Flamati,
correct.
and that included Sergeant Good.
Yes,
You had done interviews with regard to Brian Albert, correct?
yes,
Jennifer McCabe, correct?
correct.
Matthew McCabe, correct?
Yes,
The defendant
yes,
and other troopers from your unit had also interviewed Kerry Roberts, correct?
yes,
Are you aware of statements that were attributed by Ms. Roberts and Ms. McCabe to the defendant as far as what she told them earlier that morning?
yes,
And you're aware of statements that Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts had made to the troopers in regard to what they had observed that morning?
yes.
Now, were you aware that both?
Dude, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this in the edit? Can I even get a video out of this shit? Who cares about anything? Why are we talking about this? No one cares. You're so boring, man. Why are we doing this?
Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts indicated in interviews on January 29th that when they had got to 34 Fairview Road, they could not see Mr. O'Keefe's body. However, the defendant sort of bolted out of the backseat of the vehicle directly over to Mr. O'Keefe's body.
Objection.
You can ask that differently, Mr. Lally.
With respect to the statements from Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts in regard to their arrival at 34 Fairview around 6 a.m. in the morning, what, if anything, stood out to you or were you aware of in relation to those statements?
Yeah, from those statements, as Miss Roberts was driving down Fairview, Miss McCabe was in the passenger seat, Miss Reed was in the back. Obviously, whiteout conditions as they're coming down like that slight hill, getting just before the left side of the property. Miss McCabe, Miss Roberts indicated that. Miss Reed said, "There he is. I see him. I see him." And Miss McCabe, Miss Roberts didn't know what Miss Reed was talking about. They stopped the car. Miss Reed ran directly over to John O'Keefe's body. And even when Miss Reed had exited the vehicle, Miss McCabe and Miss Roberts still didn't know what was going on and what she was running to.
Now, were you aware from your conversation with firefighter Flamati that the defendant had stated, I hit him, in the presence of firefighter Flamati earlier that morning?
Yes.
And were you also aware of statements the defendant made to other first responders about her being or getting into an argument with Mr. O'Keefe as she was dropping him off at 34 Fairview, indicating the last time she saw him?
Later on, subsequent interviews.
So at the time that you're sending these text communications within this group chat in the later part of the evening of January 29th, 2022, what is it that you did know in relation to your investigation with regard to Ms. Reed, the defendant, and or anyone else?
All right. So we knew the last person seen with Mr. O'Keefe alive was Miss Reed. We knew they were traveling to Fairview Road. Witnesses stated they saw a SUV out front of the house. It went from one side to the other. Miss McCabe was texting John, parked behind me, things of that nature. John never went into the house. And then the following morning, Miss Reed, Miss Roberts, and Miss McCabe located Mr. O'Keefe in the front lawn. I observed those injuries at the hospital. The one sneaker. Later on in the day, the CERT team, along with Detective Lieutenant Tully, found broken taillight pieces that matched Miss Reed's taillight, as well as the missing sneaker that matched Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. Some inconsistent statements that Miss Reed had provided to Sergeant Mechanic and I. Yeah.
So at the time that you made those comments, disparaging comments in regard to Ms. Reed in the context of those communications with your friends, as inexcusable, as unprofessional as those comments are, the information you had was that Ms. Reed had struck Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle
Yeah, you've got to watch the form, Mr. Mallon, it's sustained.
All right, so what do you guys want to talk
You made
about?
those inexcusable and unprofessional comments.
It's 89 and cloudy here in
What did you
Houston.
believe the defendant had done to Mr. O'Keefe?
Kind of overcast right now.
I believe, based on all the physical evidence and facts, Mr. O'Keefe got out of that vehicle holding that
Lunch
cocktail
was
glass he
nice.
walked out of the waterfall bar with. Miss Reed pulled ahead and then backed
It was
into him,
this
struck
like
him
chicken
with her
thing
vehicle.
with
then
cauliflower, rice, and
They came back
some
5.5 hours
asparagus.
later,
Was
right?
very tasty.
Correct.
Tell me further.
Oh, thank God.
Jackson?
Very briefly, Your Honor.
Excuse me. I gotta get back into it. All right, I'm back.
So you think that your assessment, personal assessment, that Karen Reed had struck this officer with a car, gave you license to call her a cunt,
Objection.
right?
Based on the evidence, sir, my motions got the best of me, so it was in poor taste. Yes, it was it was inappropriate, juvenile, but it was my motions that gotten the best of me.
And you called her a whack job. Gave you license to call her that too.
Yes,
Gave you license to say to your friends, oh, no. She's fucked, right?
that's what I wrote.
Gave you license to say that she's a retard.
Again, another disgusting comment.
Sir, you had an agenda from moment one, did you not?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you have an agenda?
Objection.
Sustained. Same question.
Thought it was a good one the first time. So the fact that you believed personally that your narrative was she hit him with a car, you get to talk about her leaky balloon knot, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
You indicated on cross-examination that you saw a video at 8:22 a.m. with some damage to Ms. Reed's right rear taillight, correct?
Yes,
8:22 before or after 5:07 a.m.?
after.
You also said that you had no idea where Kevin Albert lived, right?
Correct.
But you did say about getting his badge to him after that drunken night with him, that you just leave it in your mailbox, right?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Yes, my mailbox.
Yeah. So he obviously knew where you lived.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you said
Good one.
there's no
Good one.
evidence whatsoever, your words, no evidence whatsoever. You talked about Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Colin Albert, no evidence whatsoever that they were involved in the death of John O'Keefe, right?
Correct.
Trooper Proctor, you're the one responsible for gathering the evidence, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Right?
I am one part of
Oh,
a greater
one part of a greater
group
whole.
of detectives that gathers evidence. I'm just one part of that unit.
You're the pointy end of the spear, aren't you?
Objection.
Sustained.
You're the case officer, the lead detective, correct?
Yes.
Sort of like the fox guarding the hen house.
Objection.
That's sustained, Mr. Jackson. Do you have anything else?
Thank you.
All right, Trooper, you are all set.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, jurors.
Ha! Thanks to jurors on the way out. I'm sure that's going to help endear them. You do your walk of shame, Mr. Proctor. You do your walk of shame.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth call Lieutenant Brian Tully to the stand.
Wow. Just wow. Just wow. I guess we'll see the rest of the day through because we're already here. It's 3 p.m. Eastern time. They usually go to 4. We got 15 minutes left. What the hell? So we'll see the rest of the day through, and then we'll make a decision about further streaming. But yeah, we'll go from there. I really have nothing more to say about Proctor. Proctor has been exposed by the defense repeatedly as a liar. He's been exposed repeatedly as a person who has a poor judgment in multiple respects, rushes to judgment, doesn't investigate all the options, comes to hasty conclusions, is, not willing to really admit when he's wrong and just kind of doubles and triples down. A person who knew the Alberts a little bit more closely than perhaps he let on, with every bit of evidence there, so some bias towards them as a potential exclusion. We had gifts relating to the wife and the sister, which might look like bribes. We have all kinds of issues with the evidence production and the evidence quality, missing 42 minutes from the tape, inverted videos, wrong timestamps. The warrant is wrong on its timestamp about when the car was seized. The car was taken before any pieces of taillight were found. And it just goes on and on and on and on. This is incredible. This has been a just apocalyptically reprehensible investigation and lead detective that, even if somehow not biased, was done in a slipshod, shoddy, incomplete fashion, and was completely tainted in a lot of ways by Proctor. So this has been mind numbing and possibly brain cell killing levels of dumb. I don't think we've ever seen anything like it in the time we've done Uncivil Law. We've never seen anything this horrific and incomprehensible. I've at times felt like my soul has left my body a little bit, because it's so surreal. I've almost like seen myself observe myself, because it's like I can't believe it's happening, and I've gotten almost a detached feeling at times from this testimony, because it so confronts any sort of acceptable reality that my brain is not able to fully process this and accept it as true. It is just that shockingly departing from anything that would resemble a norm. And so if the jury convicts after all that, man, I don't know what's wrong, because the standard is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you don't have doubts based on reason at this point, I simply don't know what to tell you.
So I'm just going to mic stuff up.
You saw this with the evidence given to the court and jury in the case now hearing from the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Take this.
Yes, sir.
And now I have to edit this nightmare. God help me. Which means I have to now re-listen to that probably 4 or 5 times. Awesome.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Brian Tully, Tully,
And how are you employed, sir?
with the Massachusetts State Police.
And how long have you been a member of the state police?
18 years.
And what rank or assignment do you currently have with the Mass State Police?
The rank I hold is Detective Lieutenant, and my current role is the unit commander for the Norfolk State Police Detective Unit.
And now, how long have you been, let me ask you first, as far as, how long have you been a lieutenant of the state police?
I was a first lieutenant in 2021, and then I attained the rank of detective lieutenant later in 2021.
And with reference to your current unit, how long have you been a member of that?
I've been with the Norfolk State Police Detective Unit for 12 years.
And prior to and throughout the course of your work within the detective unit, the Norfolk DA's office for the state police, what, if any, specialized training have you received and or given in regard to investigations and how they're conducted?
For the first 10 years as the rank of trooper and sergeant, I was on the homicide section of the unit. When first entering the unit, I received instruction on how to conduct homicide and death investigations. In addition to that, I attended over 200 hours of specialized training in the use of cell phones and cell phone technology in the furtherance of criminal investigations. Further on, I have now been an instructor about cell phones and cell phone technology in criminal investigations. I've taught death investigation classes around the Commonwealth, and as well as search and seizure law in Massachusetts.
Now, if I could ask you just with respect to your unit, if you could explain to the jury sort of what is the role and what does your unit do with respect to death investigations within Norfolk County?
So each district attorney's office has a state police detective unit assigned to it. So Mass General Law, Section 38, Section 4 says that the district attorney is in charge of all death investigations. So if someone passes away, essentially not in the presence of a doctor or the circumstances that led to their death was outside the presence of medical care, the district attorney is in charge of the investigation or their representative. And so each DA has a state police detective unit assigned to them to act as their representative. In certain jurisdictions like Boston, Worcester, and Springfield, the DAs in those counties have said that those local departments can be their representatives, but throughout the Commonwealth, the state police is the DA's representative in those death investigations.
Now, as far as assignments go, or as far as how is it that, well, as far as how an investigation is run, how is it that a call comes in? If you could take the jury through sort of from the time the call comes in, how that investigation is.
I'll talk in a typical state. Oftentimes someone passes away, again, not in the presence of a doctor, gets found by somebody, a loved one, a friend, a passerby. They call 911, which gets routed to the local police, who respond and come to learn that someone has passed away in the circumstance. That police department will then call the troop headquarters on the state police. The state police is cut up in different troops by geographic location. Each troop duty lieutenant would have a list of who the on-call person is for the state police detective unit of jurisdiction. They would then call that trooper or sergeant directly to inform them that there's a death in a certain community and give them a telephone number to contact somebody who's directly on scene to get more information.
Now, as far as your role as sort of the supervisor or the lieutenant in charge of the unit, can you describe to the jury sort of what your role is in regard to those investigations?
So within the detective unit, we have the homicide section, a narcotics section does narcotics investigations, and a special investigation section. So specific to the homicide section, there are certain levels of supervision. We have a sergeant assigned to the homicide section. I have an executive officer who's a lieutenant, and then me. So multiple levels of supervision specific to any of the sections, including the homicide section.
Now, turning your attention to January 29th, 2022, at some point did you become aware in the morning with regard to a death within the town of Canton?
Yes.
And what, if any, when did you become aware and how did you become aware initially of what had transpired?
Shortly after 7 a.m. that date, I received a call from Sergeant Yuri Buchanan informing me that a person by the name of John O'Keefe was found unresponsive in Canton. He was transported to Good Samaritan Hospital, where it was expected he was not to survive. Normally, I would not get a call like that, but we learned that Mr. O'Keefe was an active Boston police officer. Sergeant Buchanan wanted to make me aware of it at that point.
And so then what happened from there as far as your unit's involved?
So as we learned more information about what was found on scene by the Canton Police Department, Trooper Proctor, who was the on-call trooper that day on the schedule, and Sergeant Buchanan responded to Canton Police to begin the investigation. And they would keep me updated as they learned more information.
Now, as far as your unit is concerned, what, if any, role does your unit have, or what, if any, jurisdiction does your unit have with relation to any kind of death, whether it be homicide, suicide, unattended death, within the confines of Norfolk County?
We have exclusive jurisdiction by law, but the law also suggests that we need to work with the local police departments as well.
And so how is it that typically in a typical investigation that your unit would work in conjunction with the local police departments in relation to a death investigation?
Their detective unit would be involved if they have one, and some departments in Norfolk County don't. They would stand by to wait for our arrival. There'd be constant communication between the responding trooper and the detective on scene about things that need to be done prior to our arrival, but essentially ask for or wait for our guidance on what to do next.
And as far as certain investigations go, are there decisions sometimes that are made with regard to your involvement or maybe your unit not being involved in a death investigation?
Yes.
And how are those determinations made, and who makes those determinations?
It falls to either the person who's on call or their supervisor. We don't respond to all of those calls. So a police officer may call and say that a woman in her 80s has passed away in bed overnight. Her primary care doctor has said that she's struggled with cancer or treatment, and that doctor is willing to sign a death certificate. In those circumstances, it's not suspicious, it's not a suicide or a fatal opiate overdose. We would not respond in that case. That would be one that we would decline. In other circumstances, we may get the call and then learn that the person's going to survive, and so we will not respond. We typically will mirror what are the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. If they're involved, then we'll definitely be involved.
Now, referring to that point, as far as the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner is concerned, in any sort of death investigation that your unit is involved in, what, if any, involvement or communication do troopers from your unit or yourself have with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner?
We have constant communication. The law that I cited also says that the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner has exclusive jurisdiction as well to determine the cause and manner of death. So we work closely hand in hand to figure out the circumstances that led to the death.
Now, as far as working close hand in hand with the medical examiner's office, what does that sort of typically entail?
Takes a turn of phone calls. We'll call in and speak to the intake person or the on-call doctor to tell them what we've learned or what we're observing. We forward reports in every case to the doctor so they understanding at least what we learned in the first 24 hours. Doctors will often reach back out to us asking for scene photographs, more reports, ask questions. And in instances where it's a suspicious death, we will send an investigator to the autopsy to stand with the doctor to make observations and answer any questions for the doctor.
Now, as far as the determinations that are ultimately come to by the medical examiner, Lieutenant, as far as any determinations that are made with reference to either cause or manner in any instance with the medical examiner, what, if any, role do you or anyone from your unit have with regard to that decision by the medical examiner?
We have little to no role outside of providing information.
And as far as the determination specifically, whether it's manner or cause, what, if any, impact does that have with regard to any death investigation that you're doing?
Well, the cause will give us a big incident. So we want to know if the person died of a heart attack or if they died of a gunshot wound. That's big when it comes to then making charging decisions about circumstances. So it's important to learn the cause, and to get the doctor's input on the manner is also helpful.
But as far as the manner, if the manner is found to be undetermined, would that impact what you've learned through the rest of the course of your investigation as far as charging goes?
No, that determination by the OCME is often in the early stages of investigation, and as we learn more information, the circumstances can change.
And the determination that is made by the medical examiner, that's strictly from a medical perspective, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to January 29th, 2022, in this call that is initially received, Trooper Proctor and Sergeant Mechanic and then essentially respond to the Canton Police Department first. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as far as your role as it pertains to this or any other investigation, how much involvement do you have, or how are you sort of apprised of what's going on?
Sergeant Mechanic, in this case and in typical cases, he's keeping me updated by telephone, so I can supervise from anywhere with my cell phone. He's giving me updates about what he's learning. We will discuss what the next steps should be. And that's what transpired over the morning of January 29th.
Now, over the course of the morning of January 29th, what, if any, conversations did you have with relation to Canton Police Department's involvement or ongoing or further involvement with regard to this investigation?
I had spoken with the acting chief at the time, the current chief, the chief at the time, Kenneth Berkowitz, about the involvement in the Canton Police Department. We talked about the homeowner at 34 Fairview and his relationship to his department. And because of the appearance of a conflict, we had made a decision that the Canton Police was going to take a step back from the investigation, and that the state police would do the investigation without them.
Now, as far as that appearance of a conflict or step back, as you termed it, what was your understanding at that time as far as what the role of the Canton Police would be?
Really to provide support. So anytime we're in a local community, we need the support of the local police. If we're going to start knocking on doors, we want to make sure they're aware or present. They have resources in town, whether it be lights or barriers that we may need to access. So I would define it as a support role.
Now, with respect to those conversations you mentioned that you had yourself and what the then current chief, Kenneth Berkowitz, who, if anyone else, was involved in those conversations?
The district attorney.
That would be Mr. Morrissey, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that abnormal for him to be involved in conversations in regard to the police department and any sort of appearance of conflict?
No, it's not abnormal for him to be involved.
And as far as his involvement in his conversations, as far as you're aware, did they evolve, or were they any greater or less than the conversations that you had with Chief Berkowitz?
No, they were the same conversations.
Let me ask you this, Lieutenant. At some point over the course of this case, or at some point over the course of this investigation, did you become aware of certain text messages on Trooper Proctor's personal phone?
Yes.
And upon your being made aware of those text communications, what, if anything, did you as a supervisor, what, if anything, did you do?
I had a long discussion with him about the content and nature of them. I expressed my displeasure as unprofessionalism and the content of them, and then I reported up my chain of command.
Was he admonished in any way?
He was by me at that conversation, yes.
Now, sir.
Oh, you spoke.
Again,
You were a
just
little.
sort of
You're a
in general
little.
terms,
Spoke some words to
familiar
him.
with this
Oh, I feel better.
investigation as you're supervising the unit that was investigating it, correct?
Yes.
Now, is it typical practice in conducting homicide or death investigations, as far as civilian witnesses are concerned, to seize their personal cell phone?
It's not uncut. It happens. Yes.
And is that a practice that occurs with respect to every single witness in every single case?
No.
And so what are sort of the parameters, or what would be some of the reasons that certain civilian witnesses' cell phones would be seized versus others?
Well, you use the word seize. So when I think of the word seize, I'm thinking in the legal context, where I think there's probable cause to believe, more likely than not, there's evidence of the crime I'm investigating held within the data of that phone. Sometimes if we believe there's information on the phone, we may ask for consent for that one specific thing or for that one specific reason. But outside of that, unless I have that belief there's data on a phone, I won't ask for consent or seize a phone and pursue a search warrant.
Now, are you aware of certain cell phones that were either seized or granted access via consent in relation to this investigation?
Yes.
And specifically, Mr. O'Keefe's phone was taken into custody, correct?
Yes.
And the defendant's phone was taken into custody on January 29th as well?
Yes.
Now, as far as civilians, there were two civilian witnesses whose phones were given via consent and then extracted, that being a Jennifer McCabe and a Kerry Roberts, correct?
Yes.
And so why was it that Ms. McCabe's phone and Ms. Roberts' phone was taken versus some other witness?
They had information relative to the actions of Ms. Reed and the communications with specifically those two individuals on the morning of the 29th. So we wanted to memorialize them and save them.
Now, sir, with respect to your involvement on January 29th, where and when did you sort of leave and become involved in the investigation beyond sort of a supervisor?
Shortly after noontime, we had learned more information that necessitated a broader search. So I had reached out to Lieutenant Kevin O'Hara with the State Police CERT team to assist with processing of a scene. And so since we were going to be processing a scene, it was prudent for me to leave my house, dig out, and drive to Canton.
Sir, with respect to, you mentioned dig out from your house. What were the conditions like around the time that you were leaving?
There was probably 8 to 10 inches at the house. So I had to dig out my driveway and the large snowbank at the end of the driveway that's caused by the plow in order to get a vehicle out and head to Canton.
And where is it first that you were heading to?
I first went to the Canton Police Department to talk to Chief Berkowitz and wait for the arrival of the CERT team, and then to 34 Fairview.
And as far as the CERT team was concerned, if you can, explain to the jury sort of the process from your perspective, from your end, as far as activating the CERT team, what it is that they do and why you had requested.
We work with Lieutenant O'Hara frequently. I called him on a cell phone, and the CERT team is out of a different chain of command. So the State Police is a very paramilitary organization with specific chains of commands with different structures. So I reached out to him and asked for.
You guys have a chain of command? You guys have a chain of command? Doesn't a chain of command typically imply that someone's in charge at like every step on the chain of command? Isn't that typically how a chain of command works? For Proctor, typically that's how a chain of command works.
For his assistance with this investigation. He had to get further approval up his chain of command, mostly for overtime and to pay the troopers to come out. That would be the way that I would make a formal request to the CERT team.
And so the initial phone call that you made to Lieutenant O'Hara, you don't have the power or the authority to sort of direct him to dispatch his team and go to 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
And so as far as that initial phone call that you made to Lieutenant O'Hara, do you know about what time of the day that was?
It was about 2 in the afternoon.
And what was the purpose of sort of that initial phone call that you made to Lieutenant O'Hara?
To give him a heads up, because there needs to be a conversation up my chain of command. So above me, there's a detective captain and a major. My major needs to really talk to his major to make the formal request. But I wanted Lieutenant O'Hara to be aware of the request was coming so that he could at least start polling his people to see who was available to respond to Canton.
And with respect to the weather, if you could just in general terms describe for the jury sort of what you observed as far as the weather conditions on that day.
I observed blizzard-like conditions. It was snowing heavily, windy, low visibility.
Michael Proctor. Michael Proctor might be E4. He's got that sham shield, right? I'm not responsible. Don't ask me to do anything. I hope you enjoyed that military joke.
John, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you a series of documents. Just ask if you could look at those, look up when you finish. And do you recognize those, sir?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
They are certified records from the U.S. Department of Commerce out of Asheville, North Carolina, for weather reports from Norwood Memorial Airport, Massachusetts, for the dates of January 2022 and February 2022.
From NOAA,
So for
presumably?
the entirety of the months of January 2022 as well as February.
I assume that's NOAA, which also is part of the military, right? Ununiformed military. One of our lesser known military branches, the NOAA people. Not all of them, but some of them. So shout out to our non-uniformed military members in NOAA. We believe you do.
2022, correct?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the Norwood Municipal Airport and where it is in relation to the town of Canton?
Yes.
Where is it?
It's the next town over.
And as far as, are you familiar with a Neponset Street in Norwood?
I am.
And does Neponset Street also carry into the town of Canton as well?
Yes.
And with regard to 34 Fairview Road, about how far away is 34 Fairview from Neponset Street?
From the Ponza Street, it's a mile, 2 miles.
Relatively same geographic area as far as the Norwood Municipal Airport and 34 Fairview Road.
Yeah, I would say as the crow flies from 34 Fairview to Norwood Municipal Airport, that's probably 3 miles.
And sir, with regard to the records for you, from your memory of those dates and those times in January and February of 2022, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what the weather was like, temperature-wise as well as precipitation?
Yes.
I love that question.
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Come off the seat to introduce the minutes.
Now you understand?
Thank you.
Space Force is under the Air Force. Yeah, Space Force used to be Air Force Space Command, right? In the same way that the Air Force itself used to be the Army Air Corps. Things change. But the Air Force got to be its own thing while Space Force reports to Air Force. In the same way that Marines report to Navy. And then, of course, Coast Guard reports to either Homeland Security or Navy, depending on whether we're at war or not. The Coast Guard doesn't get enough love. They're badasses. I love the Coast Guard. They're the ones that jump on the drug submarines. They're cool. The Coast Guard kicks serious ass. And then we also have the Surgeon General Corps, which I still don't really completely understand what they do. But they're also military.
You are unmuted.
Yeah, U.S. Army Air Corps. That's what I said. U.S. Army Corps, R Corps, then U.S. Army Air Forces, then USAF. See, I didn't know about the intermediate step. You caught me. I did not know about the U.S. Army Air Forces. I did not know about the intermediate step. I thought it just went from Air Corps to USAF. So, hey, you taught me a thing. There was an intermediate step. Nice. Thanks for the history lesson. The Seabees, you better believe it, baby. And then, of course, the Coast Guard is like the second largest Navy in the world, which is hilarious, too. If I were going to do military, I think it would either be Coast Guard or if I was going to do military, because I'm pretty old at this point, I don't think they'll take me. But I would have done like Coast Guard or Air Force, I think would have been the way to go. Yeah. As long as they don't make me a missileer, I don't want to sit in a hole all day. That sounds boring.
At some point, you respond to 34 Fairview Road, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you recall about what time it was that you arrived there?
About 5:30 p.m.
And when you arrived there, who, if anyone else, from the state police preceded your arrival?
There was at least 2 members of the CERT team present, including Lieutenant O'Hara.
And if you recall, where were they located in relation to the residence?
They were directly in front of the residence.
Now, as far as their search was concerned, how was a determination made, or who, if anyone, made a determination as far as where they were going to search?
So typically when I work with Lieutenant O'Hara, I kind of give him direction. So in this case specifically, I learned from Sergeant Buchanan that Mr. O'Keefe was found in an area between the flagpole and the fire hydrant. So we concentrated that area. And so I talked to Lieutenant O'Hara that this is going to be our parameters, and he instructed his people how to deploy or to that area.
Now, sir, as far as beyond sort of directing as far as an area is concerned, what, if any, other involvement do you typically have when it comes to the CERT team and how they conduct their search?
They're professionals with expertise in that. So essentially I just point them in the direction, and it's up to them to figure out how to deploy it and get the mission done.
And so what, if any, involvement do you have as far as when they begin and how many people are involved, or when they end, or anything like that?
I'll have some consultation with Lieutenant O'Hara, but it's really his call to make.
But we did that video once on like the 50-year-old who went back to basic, although he was already in the Army in the first place, because it was ARP, it was like 56 or some bullshit, and he went back to basic and crushed it. We watched that video before. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. This guy was in the military. He enlisted when he was like, 18 or whatever. He got out, right? And then he decides, I forget for whatever reason, he decides, you know what I want to do? I want to go back into the military. And they say, okay, but then they say due to some sort of rule change, he has to go back to basic, even though, he was honorably discharged and everything, but there's some like quirk in the rule. So he's like, an E4, E5 or whatever, right? And he has to go back to basic with all the 18-year-olds, and he's like 56. And then he winds up like crushing it. He winds up like in the top 10% of the class and basically shows up all the 18-year-olds. Hilarious. So maybe there's hope for the rest of us, those 40-year-olds.
And as far as this particular search on January 29th, do you know how many members of the CERT team eventually responded and how the search was conducted?
There were 7 members. Most, if not all, had typical snow shovels, and they used those shovels to systematically go through the snowbank that was in front of 34th Fairview within these 2 parameters.
And over the course of, now as far as where they were searching, can you describe sort of the road conditions as far as
Yeah, my great grandfather was a little bit older than I am now. I think he was 45, and he was eligible for the draft in World War II. I know that because I found his draft card on file when I was doing my ancestry research. So he was 45 or 46, and apparently he was eligible for the draft. So I guess they had a different standard back then. Then again, it was World War II, so yeah.
Snow removal had concerned, or where the precipitation amounts were concentrated with respect to the road?
So the road was only plowed really right down the middle. Barely 2 vehicles could get by at a time. The snowbanks on either side of the road were protruding into the road. So that was kind of the snow setup. Our cruisers were just kind of buried in snowbanks a little bit down the road as we excavated this.
And sir, as far as this search was concerned, what, if any, information did you provide to Lieutenant O'Hara as far as items being searched for, or what was he directed to be looking for?
There were 2 items specifically. We were looking for potential pieces of a taillight of a vehicle and a shoe.
And as far as a shoe and potential pieces of a taillight, where did that information come from, or why were those the items that were being looked for?
Relative to the shoe, when Sergeant Buchanan and Trooper Proctor responded to Good Samaritan Hospital and collected the clothing of Mr. O'Keefe, they realized that there was only 1 shoe present at the hospital. They had contacted the Canton EMS and other people who cared for him, and they'd learned that a shoe wasn't removed at the scene, and that when Canton Fire and EMS arrived, Mr. O'Keefe only had 1 shoe on. So it was important to locate that second shoe. Relative to the taillight, we'd gotten information that witnesses stated that Ms. Reed's vehicle had a broken taillight, and so we were looking for evidence of it being broken at that location.
And with respect to the search that was conducted by Lieutenant O'Hara and members from the CERT team, where was that in relation to either the roadway or the front lawn of 34 Fairview?
Well, as we were excavating this, or as they were excavating this snowbank in front of it, we realized that the snowbank protruded about 3 feet into the roadway. So as they were moving this first part of the snowbank, we're essentially shoveling the road. And so as they continued on there, they would then hit the curb area.
And as far as beyond the curb area, as far as grass or the front lawn, was the CERT team members, from your observations, able to go beyond the curb into the front lawn area?
No, they're having difficulty shoveling with plastic snow shovels onto the lawn, from the lawn.
And Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Lieutenant Tully, with respect to the CERT team and their search, what, if anything, did you do to document and memorialize their efforts as far as any items that were recovered?
I took photographs of items that were eventually found in place and documented them in a report, and they were collected in evidence bags.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ike was 5-star? Really?
I may have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Jurors, we'll be stopping at 4 today. Okay.
Yeah. I'm having a memory trigger though. I'm having a memory trigger. Like they tried to maybe Congress passed a law to try to issue Pat in a 5th star posthumously, like in the 90s. Or am I like having a brain fart? Because it's like I seem to maybe there's yeah. I mean I think they might try to award him a 5th star posthumously. Yeah, Washington is 6. You're right. Washington is 6. Yeah.
And sir, with respect to
Whatever that means.
I'm going to place before you Bill 2, and direct your attention to what's been marked as exhibits 111 through 134. And just in general, I'm just going to ask you to recognize.
Pershing and Bradley.
I do.
What do you recognize those to be?
The photographs that I took that afternoon.
May I approach this to retrieve, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, I don't want to belabor the point, but if I could just publish just a couple of these exhibits.
Okay.
Lieutenant.
Marco says I shouldn't pause the video.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit 111.
Okay, noted.
Lieutenant, there should be a laser pointer on the desk.
MacArthur, sure. 5-star from
If I could ask, first of all, do you
5-star from
recognize what's up on the
World
screen
War
as
II?
exhibit 111?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
Patton got
The
demoted to
front
3.
of 34
That
Fairview
sucks.
Road in Canton and the flagpole I previously mentioned.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, just direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observe in this exhibit.
So this picture was taken to memorialize this piece of red plastic here.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit 114.
Patton never lost
Again,
rank, lost his
Lieutenant,
command.
you
That sounds more
recognize what's up
plausible.
on the screen as exhibit 114.
Yes.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed there.
It's that same previously mentioned red plastic. The purposes of the multiple photographs, I'll take one as overalls, and as I get closer, I'll take more photographs to give better context.
And these photographs of these items, were they taken, the items that you're photographing, were they moved in any way prior to you memorializing them with photographs?
Yes, this piece in particular, the CERT team member, as he was removing the snow with the shovel, had picked up this piece of plastic with it. I asked him to place it back where he found it, where it approximately was, so that I could memorialize it in place.
So it was picked up and you asked him to put it back where he found it, and he did so?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit
Was MacArthur
117.
reduced in rank? I mean, presumably. At some
Again,
point.
Lieutenant, you recognize what's up on the screen as exhibit 117.
Yes.
What do you recognize that?
Members of the CERT team doing their excavation of the snowbank.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit 120. Again, sir, do you recognize what's up on the screen as exhibit 120?
Yes.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed in this photograph.
A black Nike sneaker
MacArthur
with
was a
white
5-star,
sole
that's right.
That was recovered in the snowbank.
He was, but like, was he
And
reduced at some point?
Subsequent to this, what, if any, comparison did you do visually with the sneaker that you observed in this photograph with respect to the sneaker that was recovered from the Good Samaritan by Trooper Proctor and Sergeant Buchanan?
They matched both in make and model, size.
Okay, maybe
The shoe that was recovered
maybe I misremembered.
troopers, at the hospital was a right sneaker. This one found was the left, or a left.
Yeah, no pink snow for sure. Yeah.
And again, sir, do you recognize what's up there as 127?
Yes.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to.
Oh, I doubt it would require an act of
significance you
Congress,
observed
but
in that photograph.
A clear piece of plastic.
he's relieved of his duties because
With respect to
Korea.
this
That
clear
makes sense.
Piece of plastic, what, if anything, did you
That makes
observe,
sense.
or did you note
Okay.
of significance as far as the surface of that particular piece of clear plastic?
I noticed that it's curvature.
But I did not know Eisenhower was a 5-star. I did not know that. Which I feel like if you were going to know that anyone was a 5-star, you would know that Eisenhower's a 5-star, right? I mean, how could you not know that piece of history if you know these other guys are? Well, I did not know Eisenhower was a 5-star. That's amazing. Okay, who knew?
in shape.
Well, you guys did apparently.
And there are raised dimples, for lack of a better term, that were along the outside of this piece of plastic, or on one side of it.
Now, Ms. Gilman, if I could have, lastly, from this group, Exhibit 131. And again, Lieutenant, do you recognize what's up on the screen as Exhibit 131?
Yes.
What do you recognize that for?
That is a photograph that I took at 34 Fairview that depicts a red piece of plastic.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down and start. We can have the lights back on. Thank you.
Ike was Supreme Allied
Now,
Commander.
With respect to the items that were observed and photographed by you on January 29th during the search team search, what happened with those items from the scene?
They were collected, placed in an evidence bag, and brought back to our offices to be secured.
And if you could, as far as the evidence sort of system is conducted with regard to this case and other cases and investigations within your unit, can you explain to the jury that process of sort of when an item is seen or an item of evidentiary value is seized, what happens?
First, to provide context, by policy, I am the evidence officer for the unit, and I have assistant evidence officers who assist me in the caretaking of the evidence. So we'll use this particular instance where evidence is collected at a scene, it's memorialized in place, placed in, if it's the right shape and the right condition, in a paper bag with some notes placed on the outside of the bag, transported to our office where it's secured either in a temporary locker or the permanent evidence area.
You know, I could probably join like the State Guard or something. I bet they'd make me like an 04 or something off the bat. They'd probably take me. Not the National Guard, the State Guard. Maybe I should look into that. That'd be cool.
And as far as when it's taken into custody and put into a bag, what is sort of the protocol or the policies with regard to how that bag is marked or what is done with that bag once you have the item contained there?
There's certain pieces of information that will typically go in the bag, the name of the person who is picking the evidence up, put in the bag, the date, time, location, a brief description of the evidence contained in the bag. It will then be taped, and initials will be placed on the tape to memorialize who did the taping and the date in which the taping occurred.
And
I am not younger
than supervisor. As far as
no, I am not younger than 37. I am not younger than 37. I am 43. I am old, my friends. I am old. Yeah, if I'm going to join the U.S. military, I'm probably going to need some sort of special waiver or some bullshit at this point. My best days are behind me, my friends. I'm sad.
Concern. You mentioned that there are some evidence officers who are assistants to you as the actual evidence officer.
Yes.
And at this time, in January 29th, 2022, who were those evidence officers within your unit?
Relative to the homicide section, it was Trooper Jeff Kotkowski and Trooper David DeChico.
Now, with respect to the evidence.
I don't even think JAG would take me. I don't think they'd take me because I honest to God don't even think I could get into JAG at this point if I wanted to. Even on the reserves, I don't think they'd take me. Will they take a 43-year-old? I mean, I doubt it.
Storage at your office. Can you explain to the jury sort of how that's managed, where it is, and how items are checked in to evidence once they're sent?
We have an evidence tracking system. So as evidence comes in, we place it into the system. A label will be created and placed on the outside with the case number and an item number specific to that bag.
Yeah, it seems like, yeah,
it will be placed into the evidence room, which is locked in 2 different methods and has an alarm.
Will they
code
let me
pad,
wear my hat?
And
that's the real key.
You need your ID pass.
I'm going to need a waiver
swipe
for that
in
one
order to
too for the
enter.
uniform.
And only certain members of the unit have access and know the code to the alarm. Me obviously being the one and the 2 assistant evidence officers. And that's subject to inspection by the state police frequently.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but at this time, it's essentially yourself, Trooper DeChico, Trooper Kotkowski, who had access to that evidence storage area?
Yes.
Now, with respect to the remainder of the troopers within your unit, would they have access to that same evidence storage area?
No.
Now, with respect to your unit at this time, late January of 2022, how many troopers were in your unit or under your supervision in the second unit at that time?
There were 13 under my supervision for the unit as a whole. Specific to the homicide section, there were 4 troopers and 1 sergeant.
And that number, as far as 4 troopers and 1 sergeant, is that sort of a typical number, a low number, high number?
Historically for Norfolk, that was a low number. We have since had more transfers come in to the unit.
And how many do you supervise within the homicide unit at this point?
1 sergeant and 7 troopers.
Now, with respect to the evidence storage area, is there sort of a temporary versus a permanent storage area contained within that locked and coded storage area?
Yes.
Sorry, I did apply for JAG, Army JAG, when I was in law school. I think it was still a 1L. They didn't accept me at that point, so I don't know what that's about, but whatever. Yeah.
And can you describe sort of the difference?
You see, I'm 43 though. I'm too old for that. I'm 43. Yeah, so 17 to 42 is not going to do it for me, man. I'm out.
Between the 2 and how
I'm out.
Things are managed by either you or your assistants with regard to evidence within the locked storage area?
So because only essentially 3 people have access to the permanent storage area, if a member collects evidence and brings it back to the office and does not have access to the main storage area, we have another temporary storage area that is allowed by policy where they can then secure the evidence. The next available time, the person who has access to the main room will come in and transport that piece of evidence from the temporary area to the permanent area.
Do I have special skills?
As far
I'd like
as
to
that
think so.
transportation or transmission from the
I know the law pretty
temporary area
well.
to the permanent area, what, if any, sort of documentation is generated in regard into that?
There's no notation from one location to the other as allowed by policy.
And as far as when items are seized and when their labels are sort of printed in relation to those items, is that always done sort of simultaneously when the item comes in, or how is that typically done timing?
Well, same with the label printing system. So only the evidence officers have the ability to create the labels and put it into the system. So you need them to create the label. So if a member comes in, doesn't have access to that
special
system,
world a little bit, yeah.
place in temporary storage area at the next available opportunity for an evidence officer or the assistant evidence officer to arrive, know that there's evidence there and process it, place a label on it, and stick it in the permanent storage area.
Now, with respect to those items that you recovered from 34 Fairview Road at the roadway in front of it, where were those items located?
Civil law is different than UCMJ? I mean, in some ways, yes.
They were in total within a 5-foot area. So if you're looking at the house, from right to left was how they were found. First was that first picture you displayed, which was the red piece of plastic. About 3 feet from that was the Nike sneaker. About 1 or 2 feet to the left of that was the clear plastic, and just next to that was another piece of red plastic along the curb of the road.
And as far as those items that were recovered and bagged and placed in evidence on January 29th, did you have occasion to bring those items with you to court today?
Yes.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Trial under UCMJ only requires majority. That's
Sir,
true.
I am,
Unless it's the death
presenting
penalty.
you back-
You're correct.
Brought my own.
Lieutenant, first, just with reference to the item I placed before you, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
The bag that contains the left sneaker that was seized from 34 Fairview Road that day, outside the residence.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, may the witness remove that item from the bag and display it for the jury.
Yes.
You don't have constitutional rights under the UCMJ. That's mostly true. But a lot of those are protected by the UCMJ themselves. Like, it's not called the Fifth Amendment, it's a different article, for example, but it's functionally similar. Yep, that's a Nike shoe for sure.
Thank you, sir. If you could place that in the back. Your Honor, the Commonwealth will seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
Okay. Exhibit 569.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm handing you two separate bags. Do those without finish. Do you recognize each of those respective bags, sir?
Yes.
What do you recognize those to be?
The bags that contain the red and clear plastic pieces that were recovered from the roadway in front of 34 Fairview Road.
And, sir, if you could, just with respect to each of those bags, read what is listed as the description on the outside of the bag to the jury.
The description on this first one is pieces of clear hard plastic tail light cover. Location 34 Fairview Road, Canton.
And the second, please.
The description is pieces of
Also,
red
I'm pretty
hard
out of
plastic
shape.
tail light cover. Location 34
So-
Fairview Road, Canton.
That doesn't help with the whole military thing.
And Your Honor, with
I'm
the court's
pretty
permission,
obese.
I would ask
That doesn't
the witness
help.
be allowed to open each of those bags and display the items to the jury.
Okay.
I think my military dreams are
Sir,
becoming
if I
my
could ask
friends.
you to start with the red plastic.
Okay.
Maybe they'll name me Surgeon General and I'll be a 3-star admiral. That'd be good. Although having a medical license would probably be helpful for that goal, I would think. Yeah, so, yeah. Text it happens, odds would be a place for you if you want it. I don't really want to take up arms against the United States. That doesn't sound like fun.
On the Commonwealth will seek to introduce and admit those as the next exhibit.
All right, Mr. Jackson, they're coming in.
I'm gonna have a tough time arguing how that's illegal, though. That'd be rough.
570.
Lieutenant, before we get to the next item before you, if I could just ask a couple questions in regard to the search. January 29, 2022, About what time is it that you arrive in the area of 34 Fairview?
About 5:30.
And had yourself or any members of your unit, to your knowledge, been at 34 Fairview at any point in time prior to your arrival there that day?
No.
Objection.
Well, I'll allow it as to whether he knows whether there were or not. No.
And about how long was it that you were on?
I just
on
need the
scene
president of
at,
the United States to
34
give me a
Fairview
direct
that day?
commission. That's all I need. I just need
About an
Joe
hour.
Biden to do me a favor. No problem.
Now, with respect to when these items were found, do you know approximately what time the first item was located by a member of the CERT team?
Yes.
And what time was that?
5:45.
Now, with respect to at any point in time that you were on scene at 34 Fairview Road on January 29th, 2022, was either Trooper Proctor or Sergeant Buchanan on scene at 34 Fairview while you were there?
No.
And with respect to around that time, as their supervisor, were you aware of where they were or their location at that time?
Yes.
And where was that?
They were following a tow truck that was towing Miss Reed's vehicle from Dighton to Canton.
Now, with respect to the vehicle and or the pieces of red and clear plastic that were found by the CERT team at 34 Fairview Road on January 29th, what, if any, conversation did you have with respect to Lieutenant O'Hara in regard to the vehicle and sort of the damage on it?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
We wanted to know what we were looking for. Specifically, Lieutenant O'Hara wanted to know what are we looking for and what's the scope of the items we're looking for. So we had discussion about how much taillight we believed was missing from Miss Reed's vehicle, so that as we go along, we would know if we had it enough, or we had it all, I should say.
And so with respect to that, what, if anything, were you able to share with Lieutenant O'Hara with respect to Ms. Reed's vehicle at that particular time?
I didn't have much information because it was still on a tow truck or being loaded up into the Canton Police Department at that time, so I didn't have any actual knowledge of how much taillight we're looking for.
And prior to you leaving from the scene at 34 Fairview Road, along with the CERT team on that date of January 29th, even at that time, did you know the full extent or how much taillight you were looking for at that time?
No.
Now, sir, if I could ask you just to, with the court's permission, Your Honor, may he remove the items from that second bag
Yes.
before him?
The U.S. Supreme Court said succession was not legal in the case of White. So I know my case law history. I want to say Barron v. White, but no.
Lieutenant, from the two items that you have before you in your hand, you had referenced one of those clear pieces having some sort of stippling or raised surfaces on it. Is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could just with your finger or just in some way delineate to the jury where you observe that to be.
So you can see it as you look through it. You can see almost bubbling of it. And as you run your finger along, you can feel indentations along there, as well as the ridges that are along the top end here that appear on both pieces.
Lieutenant, if you could, you can place those items back in the bag. And Your Honor, the Commonwealth would seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
No objection.
This is 571.
You?
Your Honor, given the time and given where I
Why
am.
don't you come to side? I would say this.
Happen to see here, read anything about the case,
All right.
please let us know. We'll see you tomorrow.
Stream's
So
over.
Tomorrow will be 9 to 4, 9 to 4:30.
I don't think we're going to stream tomorrow. I think we're done with streaming, which is just as well because I need tomorrow to probably edit. Tomorrow we just might start like at late 9 in the morning and just have an edit day because, oh my God. There's so much. But Tony, I still want you to keep your head in the game, if you don't mind, with new testimony. Okay, I can take care of the old stuff. I got it covered. But if you can keep your head in the game with new testimony and find if there's new things for us to use for future, I'd appreciate that. So because the editing is members only, I can take care of myself. All right, I'm going to use the restroom real fast, and then we can talk for a minute, and then I'm going to sign off in that order. I'll be right back. I'm back. It's only 3 my time, so I'm going back to the gym. I'm going to finish my workout, and then I'm going to have a shower, and possibly at that point go to sleep. Sleep at 5 o'clock in the afternoon sounds like a good experience to me. We can hang for a second though before I do those things. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, daily quick bites. This is my problem, right? So like I say to you, okay, the Supreme Court has said that succession's not legal. And you say to me, well, they decided like Dred Scott and stuff. And I'm like, well, yes, but they overturned those cases. So do you think they're ever going to turn Barron v. White? And you're like, no, I don't think they will. I'm like, okay, well, if the Supreme Court doesn't overturn it, then it's not legal. And so if I can't change their mind, right, if I can't change their mind, then it's illegal. And so then the only way to make it legal, the only way to make it legal at that point is to, force it with, guns and stuff, which, is not necessarily ideal. So, at which point you don't need a lawyer, at which point you need someone else. So, yeah. So, yeah. It's like if you can't convince the Supreme Court it's legal, all your alternatives to force it. So, yeah. History will be the ultimate judge, as ever. Yes, that's true, as ever. And if you wind up somehow forcing the United States to recognize Texas as an independent country, then great. But if you can't do that, then, yeah. And it's hard to see how you do that because there's only really 2 ways to do that. well, there's, I guess, 3 ways to do it. There's 3 ways to do it. One is you get Congress to somehow agree to this plan. If you can get Congress to sign off on it, then that probably works because, well, you know, why not? So plan number 1, somehow get Congress to agree to this plan of Texas can leave and be its own thing. So good luck with that. Option number 2, somehow get the U.S. Supreme Court to agree that it's legal without Congress. In other words, Texas can just leave on its own. So somehow you have to overturn the case law. And good luck with that. Or option number 3, somehow you force the United States to accept Texas as its own independent country, which if you can't do it through Congress, and if you can't, or a constitutional amendment, I suppose, you could also do it through, a direct constitutional amendment. If you can get if you get 37 other states to sign off on this plan, you could do it through a direct amendment. You could do it that way. So that's another way. So constitutional amendment, get Congress to sign off on it, get the Supreme Court to sign off on it, or make the United States do it, which entails bloodshed. Those are really your only options. So, you know, and, you know, I would, all things being equal, I would very strongly prefer not to take up arms against the United States. That doesn't sound like a good time. Not for at least the reasons that I'm quite fond of the United States and I don't really want to overthrow it. So, you know, there's that. So. Yeah, national divorce would fall into the category of Congress agreeing to this plan. Yeah. You're probably your best option among these options. Probably your best option is a constitutional amendment. Let's say it would be easy. You need 38 states to agree to this plan. Although you only need, what, 2/3 to propose it in the first place? So you just need 2/3. If you can get 2/3 to propose it, or anywhere even close, if you can get close to 2/3 to force a convention of the states, then you'll probably get congressional action to avoid the convention of the states. So if you can get close to 2/3, you'll probably get Congress to do it. But that's probably the most realistic option, is getting something close to 2/3 of the states to propose an amendment that allows states to leave. That's probably the most realistic, lawful way to do it. So you could try that. Yeah, convention of states. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could try that. I think 22 states have already gone on board. Well, it depends what you mean. I believe that 22 states have called for a convention of states, but I don't believe 22 states have called for a convention of states for the same reason, which doesn't count. Right? They all have to agree for the same reason. It's like passing a constitutional amendment. It's the same thing, right? They all have to agree on substantively the same thing. So if you want to pass a constitutional amendment, you need, well, either both the House and Senate to pass the same bill, essentially. If you want to do a convention of states, you need 2/3 of the states to agree on essentially the same fundamental purpose. Otherwise, they're just arguing for different things, and that doesn't count. So you need, yeah, 22 states at some point have asked for a national convention. I believe that. 22 states have asked for common purpose. Don't believe that. We've never seen a convention of states, ever. It's never happened. Unless you count the original Constitution as a convention of states. So unless you count the original Constitution as a convention of states, it's never happened. So, yeah. Also, it's very unclear legally what would happen if you did have a convention of states, because you never done it before, right? So assuming you could get 2/3 of the states to agree on a common purpose, would the Convention of States be limited to that purpose? Or could they agree on other things? So there's a whole legal fight to that, right? So assuming that they passed amendments out of the Convention of States that were other than their purpose, and assuming you got enough states to ratify them, are they part of the Constitution or not? And that's an unclear answer. So, yeah. If a national divorce happens, how do we divvy up the power grid? Well, Texas has already got that covered. Texas has already got that covered. We have our own power grid, so we've got that covered. We're good to go on the power grid thing. We've got that issue solved. So we're good. Yeah. I am very small c conservative, in addition to being like larger, probably big C conservative, but I'm very small c conservative as well. It's like this Convention of States just scares the shit out of me because it's never happened before, and I'm very concerned about the bullshit that will happen. I'm very, very strongly concerned about bullshit occurring that will fuck the Constitution in ways that are unimaginable. So I have deep reservations about the Convention of States as an idea. It strikes me as like building a house versus tearing one down. There are way more ways to tear down a house than to build up a house, right? So it just strikes me as inherently way more ways for it to go wrong than for it to go right. So the Convention of States scares the shit out of me as an idea. So yeah. You're welcome. I don't mind Constitution talk time. It's one of my favorite subjects. I like the Constitution very much. It's one of my favorite subjects. The Constitution is awesome. It's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, political document ever written. Not to say it's perfect, but it's pretty damn good. Its separation of power, both horizontally and vertically, is brilliant. If it does lead to complications, which is kind of the point. Power checking power, right? Power checks power. How do you prevent someone from gaining too much power? And the founders found the answer. Power checks power. So you have both horizontal checks of power and vertical checks of power. That's pretty brilliant. It prevents the government from doing things that are, completely off the reservations, totalitarian, because everyone's too busy scrambling for power. It's pretty cool. I'm fascinated with how knowledgeable you are. Thank you. I read a lot, and I like to think I have a very broad-based education. I did actually try to go to college and actually learn something, and law school and actually learn something. Plus reading, it's like, it's helpful to understand these things. And the judicial branch is still my favorite, even though it's the least democratic, which I suppose is funny. But what can you do? Should have been a liberal arts student. Yeah. I did get a political science degree too. I got 2 BS degrees. I got a BS political science degree. I graduated twice. I graduated both May and August of 2004. Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, I got 2 pieces of parchment instead of 1. Respect, right? I didn't do a double major. I did a double baccalaureate. So I graduated twice, got 2 separate degrees, the whole 9 yards, baby. Pain in the ass. Pain in the ass. The biggest problem was that by rule it required 30 hours on top. So I think I wound up with 162 credit hours in undergrad. Computer science is my other one. Computer science and political science, which are very different subjects, but still, yeah. I have a BS computer science and a BS political science. So those are my 2 undergrad degrees. Then I went to law school. The BS political science degree was interesting too because it didn't exist when I started school. So it was interesting because like it was rumored for a while. So I was like, for a while I was taking a degree that didn't exist on the promise it would exist, but finally it did exist. So that was nice. But I was also like having to guess as to what the requirements would be, you know, because it wasn't finalized yet. So, but fortunately I guessed well. And so I didn't wind up, you know, with too much of a problem. But it was kind of hilarious there for like the first, I forget when they finally added it. It might have been in my 4th year. It might have even been my 5th. I forget when they made it official, but they didn't make it official like for at least 3 years. So like for the first 3 years, I was studying a degree that didn't exist. Good times. It's like, we'll have to create one. Political science. Yeah, BS political science. Yeah. BS political science. They had a BA political science. They had a BA political science. They didn't have a BS political science. And I didn't want to do the BA. Mostly because I didn't want to do the 2 years of foreign language. I'm not very good at foreign language. I think I got a C in like Spanish too. Cause like I'm just not very good at foreign language. So I just really, really, really didn't want to take foreign language, and foreign language wasn't required at all for the computer science degree, thank God. Right? It says no, I didn't have to take foreign language at all for the computer science degree. And I would have taken BA political science, but I didn't want to take the 2 years of language because I don't want to take Spanish 3 and Spanish 4. I'm like, I can barely work this out as it is, right? So yeah, and also it wasn't that bad because the BS basically required a lot of math courses, but of course I was already doing the math courses anyway for the BS computer science, right? So like, it's like, oh, we require you to take these advanced things. That's right. That's like, oh, that's okay. I've already had calculus a couple times over at this point because I had AP credit, plus I took it in college. So it's like, how many calculus degrees do you want, right? Or things like you want. So, yeah. Me and foreign language never got along. I took Latin in middle school. I took French for a year. I took Spanish. I always did very, very poorly in foreign language. Rough. Me and foreign language do not get along. In retrospect, I kind of wish I'd done a philosophy minor. I never really took a formal philosophy class, which is kind of lame. I mean, I couldn't have gotten a philosophy degree, presumably, because they didn't have a BS philosophy, which would be hilarious if they did. A BS philosophy degree, that'd be just too hilarious. But I wish I had taken some more philosophy classes in there. It was my only sort of regret. Formalized philosophy classes, I think would have been cool. But like, it's interesting because I speak law pretty well. So, you know, it's like I understand law, which, you know, is sort of a little bit of a language unto itself. So I got that going for me. So that's all right. And then like in law school, I was kind of doing the same thing. So I was basically doing like 17 credit hours every semester for 5 years. And then in law school, I was like burning the candle at both ends too. I was taking full class loads plus a bunch of extracurriculars at the same time. I also created my own law review because, you know, being part of law review wasn't good enough for me. So it's like, I'll just create one. So that was a thing. And yeah. It's interesting though, especially since I became a lawyer, I read basically for pleasure a lot less because I just wind up reading court cases so much. And like every court case is like 30 pages. So like I don't know how many books I read equivalent, but it's got to be a lot. But it's all like legal cases now, which is an interesting thing. At least on the plus side, it's like I'll never run out of material. Right? It's like they'll never stop writing. They'll never stop writing. So I don't have to worry about when J.R.R. Martin or someone will write the next book. Don't worry. They're writing the next book literally every single day. Multiple books every single day between all the courts everywhere, you know. I was like, don't worry, plenty of material coming down the pipe. No, don't worry. So I was like, well, I'm satiated. Try audiobooks when you work out. I've tried audiobooks when I work out before. I haven't really had much luck with them. I tend to like just listen to music when I work out. I find it a little bit easier. I find it difficult to concentrate when I'm working out and listening to audiobooks. What area of law do I practice in? Historically, I was patent law, hence the computer science degree. Well, that wasn't the reason I got the computer science degree. It just turned out to be a nice coincidence. But I was on the transactional side of patent law, was my practice, or was my work for 15 years. And then in the last 2 years, I have been a YouTuber. I was working on an appeal recently to the Supreme Court, or a writ of cert. I was working on that recently. I recently joined the appellate section of the Texas bar, so I'm going to go to their meetings and try to find more work that I can do, appellate related, federal appeals. I like the federal system a little bit better. The federal system has the benefit of being more uniform, although even then it's not completely uniform because of the different circuits. But the rules of procedure are more consistent than like trying to operate in different states. But like, yeah, I probably need to file the paperwork. So maybe because I got a little bit of extra money this month from the YouTube. I assume that there's a little bit of fee. I got to file the paperwork to get admitted to the Court of Appeals for the 4th and 5th Circuit because I still have my Virginia license, so why not? And then I could take cases in the 4th and 5th Circuit. So that'd be cool. I'm already admitted to the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit in case I want to do patent cases or like U.S. claims or something. So I'm already a member of that court. I just need to file the paperwork at some point and like get the 4th and 5th Circuit so that I can like add it to the list. Did I get a scholarship? I did like my first year, yeah. I don't really have a relationship with Steve Gosney. Not a slight on him in any way. I've been on stream with each other, but we've never really had connection beyond that. So I don't really have any kind of relationship with Steve Gosney other than the fact that we've been on stream with each other. Just I guess hasn't come up. If I could do it all over again, what would I choose for law? Appeals. Appeals are my thing, man. I'd want to be an appellate specialist. Civil appeals. Civil federal appeals. I don't really care much beyond that. I don't really care what beyond that. Anything will be fine. Any subjects is fine. I can learn the law as I go, which is incidentally what I was doing when I was writing that Supreme Court cert petition. I didn't know anything about the area of law. I didn't even know the law existed when I took that case. I didn't know the law existed. Never heard of it. And so one of the things I was sort of remarking to myself was funny is, you go from a position where you literally have never heard of the federal law, you have no clue it exists. And one of the things that's funny about it is, I was remarking to myself, it's like, by the time, assuming this got to the Supreme Court, it's like, by the time I'm standing in the Supreme Court, I should be the smartest person in the room, because I need to know more than everybody, right? I mean, knowing more than justices won't be particularly hard, because although they're incredibly smart, they won't be particularly, they won't be experts in every area. So knowing more than them won't be necessarily hard. It won't be easy because they're incredibly well versed. But but being able to literally hold court and literally, so it's like you go from I have never heard of this law before to I am literally the most well-educated lawyer in the nation on this subject. And I find that just incredibly fascinating. That is just unbelievably fascinating. And something about that is very, very cool to me. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting. It's kind of like getting a PhD or something, I guess. In some ways, it's kind of like getting a PhD, I suppose. It's like you read everything there is to write, and then you write this brief or these briefs, and it's kind of like a little dissertation. You're trying to prove something, right? You're trying to prove something that's never been proven before. Otherwise, why would you be at the Supreme Court, right? So you have to, and then of course, who's your dissertation judges but the Supreme Court themselves? And so do they accept your dissertation or don't they? So it's a very interesting academic exercise. Yeah, 4th and 5th. Yeah, Virginia's in the 4th Circuit, Texas is in the 5th. So since I have licenses in both those states, 4th and 5th, yeah. Why not? And then, if you're lucky, you get to do it over and over and over again, right? If you're lucky, you get to do it multiple times. They don't get to, they don't call you doctor afterwards, though. That's annoying. Yeah. Will I be posting briefs? I might. Depends on a whole bunch of things. I can't talk about it in too much detail right now. I'm sure you understand. Privilege issues. Getting called doctor is kind of nice. Yeah. Lawyers who call themselves doctors are real assholes. I've known like one person who had a JD and is like, I insist on being called doctor because I have a JD. It's like, dude, no. If all you have is JD and you call yourself a doctor, you're an unbelievable asshole. So yeah, no. Just no. Why does the Supreme Court even have oral arguments when they essentially decide everything all the time? Well, I suppose the answer is just because oral argument is historically the way it goes. And oral argument is basically like the whipped cream and cherry on your sundae, right? It's like you're not going to really win without the base, but you can put a little extra flair on it and get yourself over the top. Or at least also the way you speak about something and the way you write about something aren't quite the same. So you have an opportunity to re-explain the issue in different vernacular and approach it from a slightly different angle. So there's that. Yeah, I'm going to stop pretty soon. I'm going to go to the gym and do some exercise. I'm tired and I didn't get my workout in and I need to get my swole on. And then I'm probably going to go to bed and maybe I'll take a nap. And if I wake up with energy, maybe I'll do some editing tonight or something. A JD is more like a master's. It's fair. It used to be called a bachelor's degree, Bachelor of Legal Letters. The lawyers got pissed, so they renamed it. So it's like, why am I going to grad school to get a bachelor's degree, right? So yeah, but yeah, it used to be considered a bachelor's because you still have the LLM, right? The Masters of Legal Letters, and there is a doctorate equivalent called an SJD. I've never met anyone who has it. I'm not sure why you'd get one, but there is a PhD equivalent called an SJD, which I don't know why anyone would do that, but you can theoretically do it. I mean, I've never even met a law professor who has one. So it's like, who's getting this thing? I don't know, but you can exist. You can get it. So I don't know what it's for. Yeah, see, I don't know what it's for because what do you need it for? Like, you obviously don't need it to teach at a law school because I've never met a law professor that has one. So you obviously don't need it to teach at a law school. And like, you don't need it really to teach at any other university for that matter. I mean, yeah, I don't know why you would get one. I'm not sure what it's for. It exists though. I don't know. But I guess you could call yourself doctor. So do I want to talk about General Granville? I don't know anything about it, so I can't really intelligently talk about it because I don't know anything about it. Or him, or her. So I don't know anything about it, so I can't really intelligently talk about it, so I'll have to take a pass. And then, of course, you can do a joint JD-MD. I've never met anyone who does it, but that's more common. Well, by comparison, it's a 6-year thing. So you get a year for free. So you can do a joint JD-MD at a couple colleges. And that's, I suppose that's the real intense one. So, but I didn't have really the requisite for that. I would need to do more biology or something. So yeah. If in case you just are a true masochist or something, that is a possibility. I disagree with you, John. I think Marbury versus Madison is directly dictated by the Article 3. Nick Rakita would agree with you that Marbury versus Madison is a gross usurpation of power. I disagree with Nick Rakita. I believe Marbury versus Madison is directly mandated by Article 3. I think it's on point. So I'm going to disagree with you, and we're probably not going to see eye to eye on this one. So no disrespect, but I've thought about this issue a little bit, as you might expect, and I just fundamentally disagree. I think Marbury versus Madison was 100% correct under Article 3. So that's what I think. If you want to think less of me now, that's okay. All right, I'm going to work out. I'm going to go work out, guys. I'll see you later. Love you guys. Till later. Bye.